I must have attended at least my 575th audition since I moved to London 3.5 years ago, or at least it felt like it. To say my attempt to launch an acting career had been a failure would be generous. Acting was always my dream. I had used drama studies as a refuge from constant teasing at school, mostly from the boys, who enjoyed pulling pranks and making cruel jokes. I thought things would change once I went to a co-ed school. Unfortunately, the bullying only escalated. Some of the girls egged the boys on, making harsh comments while offering me lipstick. Like many children, I used humor to cope. I mimicked teachers, and though my impressions were spot on, my classmates quickly lost interest and went back to their cruel ways. I was called Marilyn, despite having dark hair. Every day was a new challenge. One time, I was thrown in a garbage bin. It was humiliating. I was a loner through high school and university, where I tried out for many roles, only to be rejected every time. There was one audition, though, that gave me hope. Jeremy was the director. He encouraged me, worked with me on the lines, and even tried to kiss me. That moment made me rethink everything, and I packed up my life to move to London and pursue acting full-time. I believed I had what it took to be great, even though directors, producers, and agents didn't see it. "You have great skills, Christopher," said Martin Handley, a well-known theatrical director, after another rejection. "But you don't have the presence. You lack something." I'd heard this many times before. I didn't have that elusive quality that draws people in, charisma, they call it. Whatever it was, I didn't have it. No one saw me as leading man material, and I didn't have the right qualities to be an outstanding character actor either. I would stare at my reflection, wishing I had inherited my father's traits, his height, build, and determination. Instead, I took after my mother, with her eyes, cheekbones, and hair. "Christopher," Martin continued, "you've got a great voice. Why not try radio plays? You'd do well in that." I did a couple of radio plays, but they didn't pay the bills in a city as expensive as London. And there was always the dream of working in real theatre, the West End, or maybe even Broadway. But I was stubborn and kept coming back for more. I wasn't ready to give up yet. The audition for Silken Memories was at a small, tucked-away theatre in South London. I joined the line with other hopeful actors. Sarah Wright, the playwright, guaranteed success for the play, and the material was powerful. The lead role was a woman who went from rags to riches while enduring immense emotional pain. I was auditioning for the role of Tom, her husband, who abandons her and faces retribution as she thrives. Charlotte Richards, the top agent in London, passed by and waved at me. I had long given up trying to convince her to represent me. "I'm sorry, Christopher," she had said before, "I can't represent you. You don't have the qualities. Look in the mirror, you're too pretty." "Jude Law is pretty," I replied defensively, but she just shook her head. "Jude is masculine," she said. "You're too pretty for a man. Why don't you go into cabaret instead? I'll represent you if you want to do that." She squeezed my arm, apologized again, and walked away. At least she didn't mention my height, something I'd been rejected for countless times. It was a tough industry, and I often wondered if directors even considered the feelings of actors. In my case, I knew they didn't. Richard Hawkins, the director of Silken Memories, was talking to Henri Prophet, the producer, when I stepped onto the stage. "The roles of Tom and Peter are easy to fill, but I'm concerned we haven't found our Simone," Richard said. Henri reassured him, "We'll find her. It's a tough role." At that moment, Sarah Wright walked in, and everyone fell silent. "Simone has to be perfect," Sarah said, flicking through the script. Everyone knew Sarah had the final say in casting. I cleared my throat. "Christopher Redden," I announced. "I'll be reading the final scene between Tom and Simone." I began the scene, but just as I reached the pivotal moment, Richard waved his hand. "Thank you, next," he said, cutting me off. I walked off stage slowly, and a tall, handsome man bounded past me, announcing himself as Simon Thompson. He began to read the same scene I had just attempted. Wait, Richard called, and I turned around. You, he said, pointing at me. What's your name? Christopher Redden, I replied, brushing my hair from my eyes. Can you read the Simone part? We need to get a sense of how Simon would approach the scene, really feel it. I nearly told him to forget it, but then Sarah spoke. You seem to understand what's behind the words, she said quietly, offering a small smile. Okay, I said, waiting for Simon to start. It was a great part, and I loved it. Tom, I don't think you understand what I'm going through, Simone. Simone, sharply don't I, Tom? I've had enough of my own struggles. Don't you think I've had my share? Don't you, Tom? Tom, Simone, please. Simone, anguished please. What, Tom? Don't embarrass you. Or don't remind you of what you've done. To me. Thank you, Richard called, interrupting. That was excellent, Simon. Are you still represented by the formidable Charlotte Richards? Simon grinned and nodded, and I slowly made my way off the stage, feeling nauseous. Mr. Redden, wait. I turned, hoping for something, but it was Sarah Wright striding toward me. Richard was deep in conversation with Henri, and Simon was talking to Charlotte. Yes. I asked politely. I just wanted to tell you, Sarah said, that you conveyed so much with those lines. You really seem to know the play. She tilted her head and examined me. It's brilliant, I said simply. The play is your best work, and the part of Simone is a real challenge for any actor. Thank you, but that's the issue for us. I'm insisting on an unknown. I want Simone to speak for herself, not be overshadowed by the fame of the performer. I completely understand. Good luck. I began to turn away, but her next words stopped me. This play means a lot to me, Sarah said, her tone tinged with frustration. We need luck, I think. She laughed, a harsh sound. We've only got 5 weeks to find Simone. Otherwise, she gestured toward Richard and Henri, they'll insist on someone like Emma Thompson. Nothing against Emma, but she's not Simone. No, I agreed. But you made an impression, even in those few lines. Thank you, Mr. Redden. You've given me hope that Simone is out there somewhere. We just have to find her. I walked out and bumped into Simon and Charlotte in the alley where they were waiting for their taxi. Chris, Charlotte said with a smile. Thanks for helping out in there. Simon got the part. He got it with just 10 words. A sick feeling churned in my stomach. It was obvious he had gotten the role based solely on his looks. He was tall and handsome, sure, but I didn't think his acting was anything special. I hadn't seen much, but it had been enough for Hawkins to pick him. Congratulations, Simon, I said stiffly, trying to push past. Thanks, old man, he replied, slapping me on the back, and I nearly stumbled to the ground. Charlotte helped me up as Simon walked to the end of the alley, searching for the taxi. You were great, Charlotte said, adjusting my coat. How do you bring so much emotion into those few lines? I'm an actor, I said, my voice flat. She straightened my coat again. Have you thought about sprucing yourself up a bit? Maybe a haircut? I'm trying to get rid of my prettiness. Still mad about that? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Sometimes I think you'd make a better woman than half the female actors out there. Thanks a lot, I said, walking off in frustration. You just look scruffy, Chris, she called after me. Get a haircut and stop with the beard. 3 wispy hairs on your chin don't make a beard. Get stuffed. I muttered, heading for the tube station. I wandered the streets, my mind racing with frustration. It felt so unfair. So incredibly unfair. That's what I told Mark after another bottle of wine. We were in his flat, and he'd patiently listened to me vent for over an hour. Mark was my best, if not only, friend. We'd done a method acting class together until he called it boring crap and quit. I ran into him one afternoon, and we had coffee. That's when I learned Mark was a female impersonator in high-end shows that toured the West End and even Las Vegas and New York. He was represented by Charlotte Richards, which meant he was doing very well financially. What about real acting? I asked, trying to sound self-righteous. His eyes narrowed. Who said this isn't real? He replied with a smirk. The paycheck is very real, my dear. The luxury of his flat made that clear. It's just so unfair, I complained again. For God's sake, darling, Mark groaned, rolling his eyes. Will you stop? It's not meant to be. Mark, I said miserably, pouring the last drops of wine into my glass. What am I going to do? Quit the acting nonsense, dear, and join me, he suggested, sipping his champagne. You? I was flustered. As a female impersonator? Exactly, he said, winking dramatically. You'd be stunning. Those eyes, those cheekbones. You'd knock them dead. Charlotte told me to work with you, but nothing, my boy. He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the mirror. Look at your eyes, I'm so jealous. He pushed my hair aside. You'd be beautiful. I pulled away irritably. I'm tired of everyone calling me pretty. You'd be a beautiful woman, Chrissy, he said calmly, sipping his champagne. Stop calling me Chrissy, I muttered. Pity I'm not a woman. I'd get the part of Simone if I were, I just know it. So, be a woman, Mark said with a carefree wave. What? I looked up, and we both had the same thought at the same time. You mean go to the audition as a woman? Do the Tootsie thing? I think you'd look a little better than Dustin Hoffman, Chrissy, Mark said with a wink. I don't think he's got your legs. Be a woman? Why not? I do it 2 shows a night, 5 nights a week. But what? I could teach you a few things, help you out. Anything, he said, rolling his eyes, to stop you from whining about how unfair everything is. God, I thought I was the drama queen. I thought about it, really thought about it, then dismissed it. I'd look ridiculous. I don't think so. It'd be obvious I'm a man. Oh, for heaven's sake. Let's just see, he said, twinkling with excitement as he poured more champagne. You mean? Why not? I have all the gear. It'll be fun, and it'll stop you from wallowing. Are you in? I hesitated, then shrugged. Okay, let's try it. Looking back, I realized we didn't put much effort into it, or so I thought. Mark slapped a wig on my head, and I stared miserably at the mirror. No, Mark said slowly, his lips pursed as he thought. It's not working. I'm no good at doing someone else's makeup. I only do stage makeup. I know. He snapped his fingers. We need a stylist. Mark, I said weakly, tossing the blonde Marilyn Monroe wig onto the dressing table. This isn't going to work. Hush. We're not giving up after one setback. We? When did it become we? I thought, when did I lose control? You know Belinda Morrison, don't you? Belinda? Yes, of course I know of her. I met her once. She had been the stylist for some big names before she started her own business. She had opened a beauty school in Notting Hill, but last I heard, she was a little bitter about actors not sticking with her. She's a good friend of mine. Mark grabbed the phone, thumbed through his address book, and punched in a number. Mark, being over 6 feet tall, always added an extra layer of comedy to his performances as a female impersonator. His exaggerated winks, pouts, and movements always made the audience laugh. Belinda. How are you, darling? It's Mark. He listened for a moment, then turned to me. Go into the bathroom and take that face off, he said with a smile, and I took the hint. When I came back, he was already ready, coat on, bag over his shoulder, and a grin on his face. It's off to Notting Hill. A horse, for a horse, he sang, bustling toward the door. He paused at the doorway. Well, are you coming? But Mark. For goodness sake, have a bit of courage. It's just for fun. We jumped out of the taxi in Notting Hill, and Mark led the way into the building where Belinda's school was. It struck me how quickly he'd arranged everything, typical of Mark. He once decided to get a tattoo after seeing a boy band lead singer with one, then flew to New York just to get it done by the same artist. Mark and Belinda greeted each other with a kiss, and then Belinda stepped back, eyeing me closely. "It's Christopher, isn't it? I think we've met before." She scrutinized me as though I were under a microscope. Most women didn't remember me, but I remembered her. Belinda was tall, thin, with dark, short-cropped hair and multiple hoop earrings in each earlobe. "Yes, that's right. So, you want to fool Richard Hawkins? And that little prick Henri Prophet?" I glanced at Mark, who winked at me. "I guess so," I said weakly. "You guess?" Belinda asked sharply. "I'm sure. I want to win the audition." She nodded, all business. "Okay, this will take a while," she said, sizing us both up. "We need to be serious if this is going to work." "We've got all night, oh dark one," Mark said, bowing exaggeratedly. Belinda rolled her eyes, muttered something about queens, and then focused back on me. "Last chance, Chris. Are you committed to this, or has our camp friend persuaded you otherwise?" I thought back on all the rejections I'd faced, the dismissals, the waves, and those dreaded words, "Thank you. Next." I was tired of the same cycle. My life was grey and miserable. The only friend I had was Mark. I had no girlfriends, and no living relatives. The reality hit me hard. I was lonely, a failure. "He hasn't persuaded me," I said softly, and Mark nodded with a small smile. "I want to do this." "Really? It won't be easy, you know," she added, her tone serious. "Let's do it," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Belinda led me in, and I had a shower. Under her and Mark's instructions, I removed all my body hair. I was initially embarrassed by Belinda's presence, but she brusquely dismissed it. "Forget it, Chris. Try to think like a girl," she winked, and Mark giggled. "God knows I do," Mark said with an exaggerated pout. Belinda disappeared to make coffee, while Mark gave me a quick tutorial on how to keep Mr. Happy hidden. I blushed but tried to take it seriously. "I couldn't live without it," Mark said dramatically, and I suppressed a giggle. Then came the corset. It was painful, but Belinda and Mark were relentless. I could barely breathe as I sat in the chair, letting Belinda shampoo, cut, and style my hair. "I'm using extensions, so we can remove them later if this doesn't work," she muttered, focused on her task. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly as I just went along with it, standing and sitting as she directed, becoming like clay for her to shape. I didn't even blink when she shoved two large, skin-colored pads into the bra cups of the corset. I stared blankly as she arranged the fake chests, my fake chests. "If this works, we'll get the glue-on kind," she said, glancing at Mark. "Didn't you have any smaller ones?" He shrugged. "I'm a big guy, dear, and now she's a big girl," he winked, but I stayed in a daze, waiting for what came next. Mark sipped champagne, insisting we both have a glass while he spun around to the music, all while Belinda worked patiently on my hair, eyebrows, and makeup, including eyelashes. Eventually, I slipped into the black dress Mark had somehow pulled from his bag, along with shoes that, mysteriously, fit. I struggled with pantyhose but avoided snags. Standing in the center of the room, Belinda removed my rollers and fixed my hair. Clip-on earrings, a necklace, and perfume followed. Mark stopped spinning and stood frozen, staring as Belinda stepped back. I stood there, feeling the lipstick on my lips, breathing shallowly from the constricting corset, and waiting. They both gawked, mouths open, and I knew in my gut that I must look ridiculous. "At least," I muttered, blinking. I tried. "What now?" I wondered. "What do I do now that this has failed?" Then, I realized just how much I had hoped this would work. "Did you see that?" Belinda asked Mark softly. He nodded. Belinda circled around me, chin in hand, studying me. "It was a rush job. There's so much more to do, but, shit," she muttered. I turned to her, confused. "I know," Mark breathed. "It's amazing. I always suspected, but seeing it. That's why I planned this, got the shoes." He suddenly turned his gaze on me. "What are you two talking about? Can you try a girl's voice?" Belinda asked. I had a good ear for accents, so I closed my eyes, recalling a few voices. After clearing my throat, still with my eyes shut, I softened my voice, making it higher, speaking from my throat instead of my chest. How does this sound? I asked, then opened my eyes. They were staring at me again. Do I sound acceptable? I asked shyly. Belinda cleared her throat. Yes, she said, oddly, glancing at Mark. Perfectly acceptable. I noticed their looks, planted my hands on my hips, and asked, will you two tell me what's going on, please? Their eyes widened, and then Mark smirked while Belinda stifled a giggle. Oh, Mark cried, she's a natural. Belinda and Mark each grabbed one of my arms and steered me toward the mirror. I gasped. Oh my God. I stared at the woman in the mirror, and she looked just as shocked as I felt. She was beautiful, dark hair to her shoulders, wide violet eyes that captivated, high cheekbones, and full red lips. I couldn't help it. I smiled, and the woman in the mirror smiled back, her eyes twinkling. I stepped back, inspecting myself. The figure was curvy, thanks to the padding, the large fake chests, and the corset. That's me, I said in wonder, turning to inspect myself more closely. Is it really me? I kept the female voice, it seemed to fit somehow. Yes, Belinda said gruffly. It's you. She shook her head. I can't believe it, but it's you. Could I get away with it? The question hung in the air. Could I pull off the audition? Could I convince them I was a woman? Suddenly, it seemed possible. Mark shook his head. No, he said quietly. What? No, dear, he said, resting a hand on my shoulder. It takes more than dress-ups. Oh, I said, my head lowering, blinking. Stop that, Belinda grumbled. What? You know exactly what I mean. The pouting, sad face. Now, Belinda, Mark said gently, she's a natural, that's all. She doesn't know. You've never done this before? Belinda asked, eyeing me suspiciously. I shook my head. No, never. Never. She glanced at Mark. Never, dear. I've tried to talk her into it, but she wouldn't listen. You can see she's a natural. Belinda studied me carefully. She could pass. It'll take a little work, but she could. How much time do we have? I think Chris said Sarah believed she had 5 weeks to find someone, Mark said, looking at me. I nodded, still staring at myself in the mirror. 5 weeks, that should work, Belinda said. If that, Mark added, time's getting away. They'll find someone by then, I said miserably. Not if Charlotte Richards calls them and tells them she has an outstanding person out of the country who will be back in 4 weeks, Mark said, grinning. I looked at him, stunned. Would Charlotte do that? Mark winked. Leave it to me. Do you want to do it, Chris? Belinda asked quietly. Give everything up for 4 weeks. Give what up? Mark asked, sipping his champagne, eating junk food, reading scripts, and getting rejected at auditions. I don't know, I said softly. Mark suddenly grew serious. He squatted down so he could look me in the eyes. Look, Chris, he said with real affection. Look in the mirror. That's you. You have a chance here to do everything you've ever wanted, to walk a West End stage, read the reviews, experience it all. Isn't that what you wanted? Yes, I whispered, and the woman in the mirror whispered yes too. You only have to do it once. Just once. Then you can show the world, all those assholes, that not only did you act brilliantly as Simone, but you acted as a woman playing Simone. My eyes widened, and the woman in the mirror looked equally excited. You think? Chris, Mark said softly, turning my face away from the mirror. I know who I am. I dress up in frocks, mime dancing queen, and I love it. But it's clear I'm not a woman, that's the whole point of my act. But you, don't you see how stunning you are? Kylie Minogue would be jealous. Seriously, you have a natural talent for acting, and now, he said, turning my face back to the mirror, you've got it too. What do you think, Belinda? I asked slowly. Tell me the truth. She ran her fingers through her hair. The scary thing, Chris, is that with a little work and practice, you'd be incredible. I know it's hard to believe, but with fingernails, piercings, plucked eyebrows, waxing, and electrolysis, you'd be gorgeous. But, I said shakily, would I be real? You wouldn't be a drag queen, Chrissy, Mark said quietly. You'd be a woman. This could be your greatest performance. Okay, I said softly. What? Belinda and Mark asked in unison. I'll do it. It could be fun, I said with a weak smile, and Belinda kissed my cheek. Now, Belinda said, all business, you need to stay here. We'll work every day. Stay here. I live upstairs, and there's a spare bedroom. You'll live as a woman for the entire time so you get used to it. We'll need money for clothes and other things. I hung my head. I'm broke. I'll cover you, Mark said. It's just a loan, my dear. You'd do that. We're friends, aren't we? Of course I'll do it, Chrissy. I'll tell Charlotte I'm a friend of. He paused. What name are you going to use? I'll need to tell Charlotte. I don't know. I could come up with one. I don't think Marilyn Mansfield is quite what we're going for, Belinda said dryly. Let me think about it, I said quietly, staring at my reflection. I had a lot to think about. I moved in with Belinda and began my training. It was intense, and Belinda was a relentless teacher. She critiqued every step I took, how I dressed, moved, and even Saturday. Every time I slipped out of character, including the voice, she was right there to correct me. There were moments when I hated her for it. The first day, she worked on my hair, eyebrows, and nails, both fingers and toes. She attached long, dark nails to my fingers and pierced my ears. You won't be able to take them out for 4 weeks, so think carefully, Belinda said. Studs or hoops? Hoops. Good girl, she said. I'd rather not go into the details of the body waxing and electrolysis session on my face, just know that I cried more on that first day than I ever had in my life. Finally, after being corseted and plumped up, Belinda allowed me to see myself. I was stunning. Wow, was all I could manage. I can't believe it myself, she said softly, staring at the reflection. Do you think, I began hesitantly, that I'm believable? Belinda laughed loudly. You're kidding, right? She grabbed my shoulders, kissed my cheek, still laughing. Chris, you're beautiful. You've got so much sensuous charm. I hugged her, overwhelmed by the extraordinary feeling coursing through me, unsure of what to say. Mark arrived with a bang, slamming the door open and beaming when he saw me. Yonder, what beauty do I see? Stop it, I said in my female voice, and he laughed. Do you have a name, fair maiden? It's too early. I need to think a bit more. Any ideas? Belinda asked. One, I admitted. And? Mark posed dramatically, like a barrel girl, and I couldn't help but laugh. Okay. I thought of Catherine Grant. Oh, Mark purred. Very regal. I like it, but I'll call you Clara. I turned to Belinda, who was watching us closely. What do you think, Belinda? Me? She seemed startled. I like it, she said slowly, it has a good sound. Then Catherine Grant it is, I said firmly, and Belinda smiled at me, though she still looked at me strangely. Mark placed his hand on my shoulder, his expression suddenly serious. Clara, he said, using my new name for the first time. I have a friend downstairs, she's my doctor, and very understanding, if you know what I mean. A doctor? Chris, you'll need some help to get through this. Drugs? I don't do drugs, I said primly. Belinda took my hand. I think he's talking about hormones. Mark waited, and I looked at both of them. Female hormones? Will you talk to her? I nodded dumbly, and moments later, Mark brought in a woman of Indian descent, dressed in plain dark trousers and a jacket, carrying a leather bag. This is Helen Waters, Mark introduced her, and we nodded in greeting. And you're Chris? Helen said, walking toward Belinda and offering her hand. To Belinda's credit, she laughed. I think I've been insulted somehow. She took Helen's hand. No, I'm Belinda. I cleared my throat. I'm Chris, I said carefully, still using my female voice, which was becoming more natural. I prefer Clara or Catherine now. Helen stared at me for a moment, then shrugged. Hello, Clara. Is there a room we could use? I led the way into my small bedroom and closed the door. I understand you're considering a transition. Am I? I asked, uncertain. I don't know, I said truthfully. Good. It's easier to take one step at a time. I'd like to do a quick examination if you don't mind. I shook my head. Do I have to take everything off? I asked shyly. She smiled softly. I'm afraid so, but I really am a doctor. It's just a quick initial exam. A few moments later, I stood before her, feeling my face burn with embarrassment as I removed the fake chests, but her expression remained neutral. She listened to my heartbeat and checked various points on my body. You can get dressed now, Clara, she said, scribbling notes as I complied. Clara, Helen asked, her expression serious. Have you been taking hormones? No, of course not. Are you sure? It's dangerous to take unprescribed hormones. I'm sure. Why? You have a feminine physique and your skin is so soft. I've always been like that, I muttered, looking away. Helen suddenly smiled. You look beautiful as a woman, Clara. I'm bloody envious. I blushed. Thank you. I suggest giving you a full injection of hormones, and I'll leave you some tablets to take. It'll help round out your figure a bit more and start shaping your chests. That'll take time, though, so you'll need to use the chest forms for at least 8 weeks. I recommend the ones that can be glued so you can get used to having them on the 24th of July. Are you happy with that cup size? I think so, I said quietly, my face burning. It suits you, you don't look out of proportion. But think it through. If you decide on chest enhancement surgery later, it's easier to keep the same size. It draws less attention, if you know what I mean. I nodded. I quite like this size, I admitted. Okay, I'll give you the injection if you're ready. I nodded again. Right, lift your skirt. She moved my panties aside, rubbed my buttock, and I felt the needle prick. There, she said, as I lowered my skirt. Here are the pills. 1 in the morning and 1 at night. And here's my card. I'll need to see you in about 4 weeks for a full examination. Clara, Helen said sternly, I'll need to see you, even if you decide not to continue with the transition, okay? Okay, doctor. She laughed softly. Please, call me Helen. As Mark was showing Helen out, Belinda quickly came to my side. You all right? Yes. Did you decide? I got the injection and pills. Are you sure? Yes, I admitted, and I was. Thanks for asking, Belinda. The next few weeks were stressful. We worked on everything, the way I walked, the way I spoke, the way I sat today. Belinda criticized every movement until I finally sat naturally in skirts. She had me practice walking in heels until my feet ached. Good, she said calmly. That's normal. She would go downstairs to teach, leaving me to practice. I dressed and undressed so many times that wearing female clothes became second nature. Sometimes, she'd sneak upstairs to check on me or watch me. At times, she had me act as the telephone receptionist for her school, speaking to other women on the phone to learn nuances of speech, inflections, and word choice. At night, Belinda took over the small kitchen and cooked us meals. After a couple of days of sitting idly while she worked, I stood, smoothing my skirt down and asked hesitantly, Belinda, can I help? She glanced at me. If you want, can you peel some potatoes? I think I can manage, I said with a smile, and she laughed. Time for shopping, Belinda announced one morning. Outside. I gasped, and she smiled. You can't keep wearing my clothes forever. They don't suit you at all. Yes, she said firmly, we're going shopping. Mark's paying, and we're going in heels. When we arrived at the shops, I noticed a man staring, and I whispered to Belinda, that man knows, he's watching me. Panic rose in me as I looked around for an escape route. Belinda glanced over and laughed. Don't be silly. He's staring because he just saw a beautiful woman with, she added slyly, big chests. Don't, I whispered, blushing. I glanced over at him through my lashes, and he suddenly smiled. Oh, I murmured, surprised. Tease. Belinda laughed. Come on. It was wonderful and great fun. We went from shop to shop, and Belinda helped me choose the right clothes. We didn't go overboard, just enough to get through until the audition. I didn't let myself think about what would happen afterward. We sat in a coffee shop, surrounded by shopping bags, sipping coffee, laughing, and chatting. It felt natural, even though our feet ached. It was the small details of the character I was building that I enjoyed the most. The way I looked when I listened, the interest I generated in others' conversations, the simple act of stepping out of a taxi. I loved every minute of it. It was becoming my greatest performance, yet I felt completely natural. That night, after we returned from shopping, Belinda surprised me. Mark hadn't been around for a week, as he was performing in Europe, but he had called and said he convinced Charlotte to arrange an audition for Catherine Grant. The meal we had prepared together was simple, but Belinda surprised me by opening a bottle of white wine. A celebration, she said. You're doing so well. Thank you, I said with a shy smile. It's all thanks to you. I'm hopeless without you. Belinda blushed and began spooning pasta onto plates. As we ate, she suddenly said, Clara, I think you're doing amazing. You're fantastic, and so is everything you're doing. I laughed self-consciously, picking at my food. I didn't know whether it was the corset or the pills, but I was eating much less. Stop, you'll make me get a big head. You're the teacher, I'm just the student. Belinda smiled as I put on some music. I sat down, smoothing my skirt beneath me without thinking, and noticed she was toying with her food. What's on your mind, Belle? I asked, using the nickname I hadn't said out loud before. She looked at me, surprised, before seeming to make up her mind about something. Well, yes. You and Mark. What? I asked, confused. Belinda sipped her wine and glanced away. You're just friends, right? Yes, we are, I replied, my fingers absently tracing the rim of my wineglass. I was starting to get used to the long nails. What are you getting at? I tilted my head, pouting. Can you just tell me what's on your mind? Belinda laughed. You're wicked. You'll get what you want with that look. Have you any idea the effect you're having? I shook my head slowly, and she reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Poor dear, you really don't know, do you? I looked at her blankly, and she smiled again. You really have no idea how beautiful you are. Belle, I said firmly, forget that for now. I think you have some concerns. What were you saying about Mark and me? Yes, we're friends, we met in a drama class. She raised an eyebrow. Just friends. Of course. I don't know what you think. Not lovers. I was stunned, never had it occurred to me. I think Belinda saw my shock immediately. I'm sorry, Clara, she said quickly, I'm just a suspicious bitch. I should keep my mouth shut. No, I said slowly, there's a puzzle, isn't there? She nodded, and I began clearing the table, placing the plates near the sink to rinse them before loading the dishwasher. Why is he doing this? I asked, staring at her. Why are you doing this, Belle? Belinda held up her wineglass and twirled it. Why are you doing this? You know why, I said. Tell me again. I thought for a moment before answering. This is my chance to be a real actor. It's crazy, surreal even, but it's my only shot, I know it is, so I'm going to take it. That's good, she said, looking away. Belle? I asked after a moment. What? Is it wrong that I'm really enjoying it? She seemed stunned, but I pressed on. I hope we're friends, I feel like we are, I said quickly, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome or something, but I feel like I can trust you. Belle, I feel amazing. I feel really alive and free. Really? She asked quietly, and I nodded fervently. Yes. You enjoy being a woman? I thought about it deeply, and maybe it was the wine, but I answered honestly. I am a woman, I said solemnly, and she smiled, kissed my cheek, and squeezed my hand. I think you're pretty marvelous, Clara. I laughed. Thank you, but you still haven't told me why you're going through all this trouble. Touché. Belinda sipped her wine. I hate Richard Hawkins. He hates me, so I guess it's mutual. Why? I don't like him either, but hate's a strong word. I know, but I really do. Her face darkened, and I reached over to take her hand. There's a story here, isn't there? Tell me, Belle, I said softly, and she smiled weakly. I was styling and dressing Elaine Plummer. She was in Romeo and Juliet. I remember, although I thought she was a bit old for Juliet. Belinda laughed. I agree, but don't tell her. Elaine was never good at picking the right material. Anyway, she said with a deep breath, my boyfriend Peter was working in Europe, and Richard came on to me at a party. Really came on to me. I rejected him, but things got ugly, and we had a wrestle. The bastard. Hawkins spread a rumor that we had a wild affair. Of course, I told Peter it wasn't true, but Hawkins told him it was when Peter confronted him. I saw tears in Belinda's eyes, and I squeezed her hand. We broke up, and later when I started my own business, Hawkins convinced all my clients to go to another stylist, a woman he was sleeping with. So, she said, her tone brightening, that's why I hate him. I stood up and hugged her tightly. I hate him too, I whispered. By the end of the third week, I was doing my own hair and makeup every morning. It had become second nature. We couldn't remember the last time I slipped out of my Clara voice or made a masculine movement. Belinda took me to her jazz exercise classes, and I found it easy to fit in. I enjoyed the company of the women, and none of them suspected anything, which boosted my confidence. Mark agreed. He stood, one hand on his face, watching me walk into the kitchen. My God, he smirked, she's even got the wiggle down. Don't tease her, Mark, Belinda said crossly. She's done a bloody fantastic job. Mark hugged Belinda. I think a lot of the credit goes to you. It does indeed, I said with a smile, and Belinda blushed. I have news, Mark announced. We're going out to dinner tomorrow night. I immediately felt nervous. Where? I'll arrange that later, he said with a casual wave. But, he added with a sly grin, don't you want to know who we're having dinner with? My heart sank, and 1,000 butterflies suddenly flitted in my stomach. Who? I asked softly. Charlotte Richards. Mark. I gasped. You can't be serious. Why not, darling? You have to meet her sooner or later. But she knew, you know, I said, stumbling over the words. She knew, Chris. It suddenly hit me that I now thought of myself as Clara, and Chris felt like someone else entirely. All the more reason to test it, dear, Mark said. If anyone's going to see through it, it'll be her. Charlotte won't agree to sponsor you for the audition until she meets you. You know how hard-nosed she can be. He's right, Clara, Belinda added slowly. If you're going to be found out, better it happens at a restaurant with us than at a crowded audition. I suppose you're right, I said miserably. Think about how confident you'll be at the audition once you know you've fooled Charlotte, Mark pointed out. I nodded and looked at Belinda. Will you come, Belle? Please. Belinda glanced at Mark, who nodded. We'll be there. Can't have dinner with an odd number, darling. Now, he said seriously, we all need to get our stories straight about the wonderful Clara Grant. As the taxi made its way to the restaurant, I leaned over and asked Belle for the 100th time, are you sure I look okay? She rolled her eyes and squeezed my hand. Yes. You're stunning. Every guy and half the women in this restaurant will stare at you. Just relax, will you? I sank back against the seat, noticing the driver's eyes in the rearview mirror. I was wearing a simple black dress just above the knee, black hosiery, jewelry, and a dark coat. Belle had spent hours on my hair and makeup, and I had to admit, the effort had been worth it. Mark was already at the restaurant with Charlotte, and the story was that Belle and I would stop by on our way to a party so Charlotte could meet me. I had suggested this plan when I started having an anxiety attack about spending the whole evening with Charlotte. Mark had sighed, rolled his eyes, but finally agreed. Later, Mark told us that Charlotte kept glancing at the door every time someone entered. "Is that her?" she'd ask, and Mark wouldn't even look up. "Darling," Mark told Charlotte, "you'll know when she arrives. You'll hear a pin drop." "Of course," Mark continued. Charlotte didn't believe it, but when you walked in, there was a collective intake of breath, and I just smiled at Charlotte and said, "That's probably Clara now." I stepped into the restaurant, and the headwaiter quickly took my coat. I was fully immersed in my role, smiling gratefully at him and letting my smile linger just enough to make him blush. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, some with mouths open, others with smiles. Mark was right, I thought, as Belle and I followed the headwaiter to the table. I had it. No one could take their eyes off me. "Darling," Mark said with a smile, rising to kiss my cheek. "As usual, you look gorgeous." Charlotte was staring at me with her mouth slightly open, and I wondered if she had already figured it out. "She knows," my inner voice screamed. "She knows you're a man." "Belinda, you look wonderful," Mark said, kissing her cheek, and she smiled. "How are you, Mark?" Belinda asked, playing her part. As we sat, Mark introduced us to Charlotte. "Charlotte, you know Belinda Morrison, of course?" Charlotte nodded, her eyes still on me. "And this is my good friend, Clara Grant." This was it. My stomach was full of butterflies again, but I managed a smile at Charlotte. "I prefer Catherine when I work." "It's wonderful to meet you, Charlotte." Charlotte stared for a moment, then finally smiled. "And you? Mark has told me a lot about you, but for once, he wasn't exaggerating. You're stunning." She gestured around the restaurant, where, though the conversation had resumed, many diners and staff kept glancing our way. "How do you get used to all this attention?" I blushed. "Truthfully," I said softly, "I don't. I'm constantly embarrassed by it." Charlotte seemed a little taken aback by my answer, and I wondered if I'd said the wrong thing. "I haven't seen you around London," Charlotte said. "Believe me," she added with a short laugh, "I would have remembered. I'm in the process of moving here. I've been living in Germany for a while. Working. Experimental theatre. Very modest roles, just to learn." "I see. You've read the part of Simone?" I nodded. "Mark sent me a script." Charlotte turned to Mark. "And where did you get a script from?" I almost gulped, but Mark smiled. "I got it from Christopher Redden. He left it at my flat after he failed the audition." Charlotte's expression softened. "Poor Chris. How is he?" "I think he's retiring," Mark said, beckoning the waiter over. "I feel like some champagne." "Champagne, dears?" He looked around the table. Belinda shrugged, and Charlotte smiled. "Why not?" "Clara. Just spring water for me, thank you." "Let's freshen up, Clara," Belinda said, and I followed her to the ladies' room. The conversation in the restaurant quieted as we passed by. "I rather enjoyed that," Belinda said, opening the door to the ladies' room. "I could get used to being the center of attention even if it's just living vicariously through you," she added with a wink. Going to the ladies' room was another first for me, in a night full of firsts. We checked the stalls, but the bathroom was empty. "You're doing great," Belinda said with a big grin. "She doesn't suspect a thing." "Are you sure?" "I'm nervous as hell." "It doesn't show. Relax." All eyes were on us as we walked back to the table, and Charlotte quickly began speaking. "Clara," she said, "Mark tells me you don't have representation." I shook my head. "I would love to represent you. Here's my card." I was stunned as I took her card. "But you haven't seen me perform," I said. Charlotte smiled. "I've seen you work this room, Clara," she said dryly. "I can only imagine what you'll do to a theater audience." "We'd better be off, Clara," Belinda said, glancing at her wristwatch. "We shouldn't be late." "No, of course not." It was very nice to meet you, Charlotte. And you? Will you think about representation? Charlotte asked. I nodded. And I've arranged an audition for next Thursday. Will you know the script by then? I think so, I replied. Mark kissed us goodbye and told us to enjoy Linda's birthday party. The conversation in the restaurant quieted as Belinda and I stood to collect our coats. Who is Linda? I asked as soon as we stepped outside. She rolled her eyes. Mark and his imagination, he can't help himself. Once in the back of the taxi, we hugged and squealed, going over the entire evening again as we drove back to Belinda's flat. She didn't suspect, she didn't. Belinda exclaimed, making coffee. I don't think she did, I said in awe. She didn't, and then she offered to represent me. Poor Chris asked her 10 times, but me? She asks me 5 minutes after meeting. Belinda looked at me thoughtfully as she set the coffee cups on the table. Do you think of yourself as 2 different people? Oh, I said, realizing what I had just admitted. I suppose I do. It's easier for me, I think. I took the coffee from Belinda, then asked, Belle, do you think it's wrong that I like being Clara more than Chris? She sat down slowly. No, I don't think so. It's the novelty, I guess it'll wear off. I didn't say anything, but I didn't think it would. Mark joined us later for a celebratory drink, and we pressed him for details of the dinner. What did you talk about? Belinda demanded. Mark pretended to think deeply. I don't know, dear, we talked about so much. Tease, I said, and he laughed. You should talk, darling Clara. I think all the men, and some of the women, had, well, let's say devious thoughts about you. I sank back into the sofa, pulling my legs underneath me. I hadn't thought of that, I said slowly. It's a compliment, Clara, Mark said when he saw the confusion on my face. I suppose so, I said uncertainly. Anyway, Mark said, waving his hands around, Charlotte is completely infatuated with Catherine Grant. She hasn't got a clue, dears, not a clue. That's great news, Belinda said, squeezing my hand. Isn't it, Clara? Yes, I agreed, forcing a smile. It is. Can you believe this? Mark giggled. During dinner, she pulls out her mobile and calls Sarah Wright. She didn't. I sat up straight. She did. What did she say? Belinda asked eagerly. Sarah, I have found Simone. We all burst out laughing. After Mark left, I sat on the sofa, staring into space, lost in thought. What's wrong, Clara? Belinda asked softly, sitting beside me. Am I doing the wrong thing? I'm lying to so many people. Suddenly, I felt tears welling up in my eyes and they streamed down my cheeks. I'm crying, I said, incredulous. Belinda laughed softly and hugged me. It's okay, Clara, really. It's just the hormones and the stress. You deserve a good cry. I rehearsed all week with Belinda until I knew the script inside and out. The audition could be my last chance to act, so I didn't want to just read, I wanted to perform. I hadn't told Belle or Mark, but if I failed the audition, both Clara and Chris would give up acting. On Tuesday, Belinda examined me closely, tilting my face from side to side. I don't think we need any more electrolysis. Thank God, I muttered. You'll never have to shave again, she said. Does that worry you? Apart from my legs, underarms, and bikini line? I batted my eyelashes, and she laughed. You're very lucky, she said after a moment. There's no sign of your Adam's apple, and your skin has softened dramatically. I think I've put some weight on around my bottom, I said softly. Must be the hormones. But I didn't think they'd work that quickly. For the audition, I deliberately chose a different scene from the one Chris had performed. Since it was the scene between Simone and Peter in the chairman's office, Belinda and I agreed I should wear a simple business suit, hose, heels, and understated jewelry. The audition was at a small theatre where Hawkins was workshopping with the understudies, and the cast was already chosen. Mark didn't come, and Belinda sat in the back of the theatre as I walked alone toward the lit stage where Hawkins, Charlotte, Prophet, and Sarah waited, along with a young man I didn't recognize. "There she is," I heard Charlotte say as she rushed forward to greet me. "Am I late?" I asked nervously as she kissed my cheek. "No," she whispered, "they're just keen as hell." I smiled as I walked onto the stage, Charlotte guiding me to the small group. "Allow me to introduce Catherine Grant. Clara, this is the director, Richard Hawkins." "My dear," he said, taking my hand, "you are stunning." "Thank you," I said coldly, pulling my hand back and smiling at Henri, who nodded nervously. Charlotte had told me he was panicking about finding Simone so the play could meet its deadlines. "Hawkins. And this is Sarah Wright," Charlotte added, and Sarah walked over with a smile. "It's an honor," I said, and Sarah blinked. "I think this play is a masterpiece. I know you must hear that from everyone, but it affects my emotions every time I read it." "Thank you," Sarah said at last, glancing at Richard and Henri. "I don't think many people have called it a masterpiece, though," she added dryly. "And this is Rodney, who will read the part of Peter for you." I smiled. "Rather young to be chairman, aren't you?" He grinned. "I'm backstage usually, Miss Grant, just helping out today." "That's very kind of you," I said, and he seemed surprised by the gratitude as he took his script. "I guess he doesn't get thanked much." "Do you have your script, Miss Grant?" Richard asked as they sat down on the bentwood chairs on the stage. "I won't need a script, thank you, Mr. Hawkins," I replied, placing my handbag on an empty chair. They exchanged a glance, and Richard nodded. "Ready when you are, Miss Grant." This was it, my moment and my last chance. Strangely, I didn't feel nervous. In fact, I felt calm and confident, as if I already owned the role. I knew exactly what Simone was feeling and what was going through her mind. After all the betrayals and humiliation, she was finally winning, taking her prize, and overcoming those who had hurt her. Rodney turned to the page and began. "Peter, don't make accusations you can't support, Simone." "Simone, mildly I think you mean substantiate, Peter. I would have thought the chairman would have a better command of the English language. Perhaps you'll have time to brush up while you're in prison." "Don't worry, I can prove everything easily." "Peter, I don't think it's wise to threaten me." Simone, laughing, "Threaten? I don't threaten, Peter, I just do. I expect your letter of resignation within 10 minutes. "Peter, or you'll do what?" Simone, "Do. Let's see if you're man enough to find out." And so it went on, and I was fully immersed in the scene when suddenly, Sarah stood up, applauding. I was surprised to see her eyes glistening. "Marvelous," she cried. "It's just how I see it." She became self-conscious, smiling. "Sorry, I thought we'd never find Simone." Richard was on his feet as well. "Simply superb, Miss Grant. Are you represented by Charlotte?" This was it. I had it, the role. Charlotte was staring at me, hopeful, and I smiled. "Yes, Miss Richards represents me." Henri smiled. "We'll arrange the contracts, Miss Grant." "Congratulations." It all happened so quickly. I wanted to savor the moment, but it was over before I could process it. And then, I said it. "Charlotte," I called, and she walked over quickly. "Yes. I want my own dresser and stylist." She grinned. "I don't think that will be a problem." "It may. It has to be Belinda Morrison." Her grin vanished. "Clara, do you know?" "Yes, I do." "Please arrange it." Charlotte walked back and started talking to Henri and Richard while I retrieved my bag. Rodney walked over and shook his head. "Amazing, Miss Grant. You were brilliant." "Thank you, and thank you for reading. It really helped me." He stared at me for a moment and then smiled. As I said, amazing. Suddenly, Richard's voice echoed through the empty theater. "No, impossible." All three of them looked at me, and Charlotte cleared her throat. "I'm sorry, Catherine, but Richard won't agree to Belinda Morrison." "I'm sorry, I thought I made it clear." Outwardly, I remained calm, but inside I was seething at Hawkins and feeling sad for Belinda. How dare he treat one of my friends this way? Yes, it's clear, Richard said with a dismissive wave of his hand. We'll find you a stylist, dear. We understand you need your hair done and all that. Don't worry about it. I'll find you the best. I stood still, feeling their eyes on me, especially Sarah's. My eyes flicked to the right, and I saw Belinda stand up from her seat, gather her things, and start walking up the aisle toward the exit door. I don't think you understand, Mr. Hawkins, I said coldly. Belinda Morrison is the best. Impossible. I won't have her in this theater. 2 red spots appeared on his cheeks, and I wondered who actually won the wrestle that Belle had dismissed so quickly when she told me the story. I took a deep breath, and when I spoke, my voice was polite but extremely formal. Thank you for the opportunity to audition, Ms. Wright, I said clearly, my voice echoing through the empty theater. But, unfortunately, I must withdraw my application. It sounded pompous, I know, but it suited the moment. I wish you the best in your search for Simone. The play is wonderful, but my friends are important to me. Belinda stood in the aisle and turned toward the stage. Clara, Richard began, but I couldn't stop myself. I think, Mr. Hawkins, we are far from first-name terms, I said in a cold, hard voice, and he flinched. Please allow me to make this clear. Belinda is my stylist and my friend, and I am privileged to have her as both. I trust her advice. I don't work without her. Clara, he began, then suddenly switched his tone. Miss Grant, are we blowing this out of proportion? I'm not, I said coolly. Perhaps you didn't understand the situation. Sarah Wright stood up, her voice firm. I think, she said clearly, Miss Grant understands this play. She is Simone, and I think she should have whoever she wants. And she wants the best dresser and stylist. And I think we all now know, the best is Belinda Morrison. Thank you, Miss Wright, I said with a smile, then made my way down the steps from the stage. As I walked, I heard Richard call out plaintively, Sarah? Don't push me, Richard, she snapped, and I smiled. My heart was racing as I walked up the aisle. Clara. Charlotte called out. Call me later, please. I nodded and walked over to Belinda, who had tears streaming down her face, though she was smiling widely. Without a word, she hugged me fiercely for a few moments and then whispered, Thank you, Clara, thank you so much. It's nothing, I said, as we walked out of the theater. I just needed the best, I added with a wink. I'm the best, am I? Belinda asked, grinning as she wiped her eyes. I grinned and twirled. Obviously, I said, hands outstretched, and we both laughed. We celebrated immediately. Mark was waiting for us at an upscale restaurant, and when we told him the news, he jumped up, shouting and dancing with glee. Don't cause a scene, I whispered, glancing around. Like you didn't when you walked in, he joked, then grew serious. You've done it. How do you feel? I don't know. I think I'm still numb. I don't know what I'm going to do. What? Mark was incredulous. My dear Clara, you must do it. You must. Leave her alone, Mark, Belinda said. I think I understand. I looked at her gratefully. You do. You think you're lying and deceiving people, don't you? Mark scoffed immediately. That's called acting, darling, acting. She was about to respond when a man in a stylish dark suit and tie approached the table. I'm terribly sorry, he said with a warm smile, but I simply must know who you are, turning to me. I thought I heard Belinda giggle, but when I turned to glare at her, she was smiling innocently. I'm sorry? I asked, trying to be gracious, knowing my cheeks were burning. My friends tell me you're either a famous American movie star or a model. We'd like to satisfy our curiosity. He smiled again, his eyes twinkling, and I wondered if my face could turn any redder. A small voice inside me said, He's rather handsome, isn't he? Am I becoming attracted to men? Impossible. I'm afraid I'm nobody, I murmured, and I saw Mark sizing him up. Nobody? The man pretended to be shocked. I'm surprised. Does this nobody have a name? I'm terribly rude. He fumbled inside his coat and pulled out his business card. I took it and read it. Alexander Edwards, Director of Marketing, Sasha Cosmetics. I set the card down, and Mark pounced on it before handing it to Belinda after reading it. "And you are?" Alexander asked. I smiled. "You don't give up, do you?" "Curiosity is a terrible thing," he replied with a grin. "Catherine Grant," I admitted, and he smiled again. "She's an actor," Mark interjected. "We're celebrating a role she just landed." "How wonderful. So my friend who claimed you were a movie star was correct?" "No," I smiled. "I prefer the theater." "How discerning of you," he murmured. "And the play is?" "Silken Memories," Belinda chimed in, clearly enjoying my discomfort. "Written by Sarah Wright. A brilliant writer, and with you, Miss Grant," he bowed slightly, "I'm sure it will be a success." "I'm afraid I've been a bore. Please forgive my intrusion, and allow me to contribute to your celebration." He spoke to the waiter, and soon, champagne appeared at our table. "He's rather attractive, isn't he? Reminds me of Colin Firth," Mark said, watching Alexander return to his table. Immediately, the man and the two women at his table started talking to him. "I suppose," I said, trying to act nonchalant. Belinda spluttered into giggles. "You have the gracious ice queen thing down pat." "Poor guy. Was I rude?" I asked, suddenly worried, and she immediately squeezed my hand. "No, of course not." The waiter poured champagne into my glass, and I watched it fizz. "You have to thank him, Clara," Belinda whispered. I sipped the champagne, turned in my chair, raised my glass towards Alexander's table, and smiled with a small nod. Alexander returned the smile and raised his glass. "I wonder if that's his wife," I murmured, and Belinda and Mark burst into laughter. "Did I say that out loud?" I asked, mortified. "I'm afraid you did, old darling," Mark laughed. We skirted around the issue of what I was going to do while enjoying our meal. I looked at Belinda and Mark and wondered if I would ever be able to repay them for helping me get to this point. I had learned so much about myself, and life no longer felt grey and dull. Winning the audition was just the icing on the cake of this new life. The entire experience had been about winning the audition, but I'd discovered so much about myself along the way that the victory, if that's what it was, wasn't as sweet as I had imagined. I had won something far more important. I had discovered who I truly was. I had found that I enjoyed being Clara Grant. In fact, I was Clara, and Clara felt more like me than Christopher had ever been. Did I really want to return to that dull, grey existence? I had a close friendship with Belinda, one that I'm sure Christopher would never have had, and Mark seemed more relaxed and supportive with Clara than he ever had been with poor Chris. "I should call Charlotte," I murmured at last, and they nodded. "I don't have a phone." "Use mine," they both said, placing their mobile phones on the tablecloth. I laughed and pulled Charlotte's business card from my purse. "Thanks," I said, picking up the phone. "Charlotte. It's Clara." "Clara. Thank God, I wondered where you were." "Sorry, celebrating with friends. I should have called." "I understand." "Clara, you were brilliant today. Sarah couldn't stop talking about you. Henri thinks you're—" "Charlotte, you don't have to do this," I interrupted. "I don't need flattery, it's okay." She paused. "Clara," she said at last, "I'm not flattering you. I'm telling the truth. You'll get to know I'm blunt, but I tell the truth. I have the contracts. Can you come in and sign them?" I hesitated. "I'll come in tomorrow, but we need to talk first." "You've got another agent." Her voice was so unlike what I expected from Charlotte, so plaintive that I couldn't help but laugh. "Goodness, no. But we do need to talk." "What time?" 10. "Perfect. I'll see you then." Mark and Belinda watched as I hung up. "Thanks," I said, but they didn't acknowledge it. "Well," Belinda demanded. "I'm going to have to tell her," I said, my voice heavy. "I can't lie. I'm sorry." Mark shook his head. "Most people would. You're a good person, Clara, he said soberly. Maybe. I tried to smile. Will you both come with me? Of course, they said together. Later, after cleaning my face, I sat on my bed in my nightdress, wondering if this was the end. Knock knock, Belinda said as she opened the door. I tried to smile at her. Can I come in? Of course. She sat cross-legged on the bed, the t-shirt she wore to bed stretched tight across her knees. What are you thinking? Belinda asked softly. Oh, I don't know, I replied. That this is the last night for Clara, I guess. I looked away, wondering if I was about to cry. It doesn't have to be, Belinda said quietly, and I blinked at her, surprised. What do you mean? I think Clara is a wonderful person who just happens to be a great actor too. If she chooses not to act, that's fine. She's still my friend, Belle added, taking my hands. You mean that? I asked. We're friends, aren't we? She asked. I nodded. Best friends. I nodded again. Thanks, Belle, I croaked, and we hugged. You want to be a woman, don't you? There it was, out in the open, and my heart was racing. Yes, I whispered, head down, hiding my burning cheeks. Belle gently tilted my face up. It's okay, Clara. I understand, and I understand the confusion. You became a woman to get the part, and now you're thinking that if you take the part, you'll be able to afford making the transition. How did you know? I guessed. She shrugged. You don't have to tell Charlotte, you know. You could just take the part and go on. I shook my head. Belle, that's tempting, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about it. But it's hard to explain. Charlotte was always kind to Chris, in her own way. I can't lie to people like that. It's wrong, it's... Shush, Belle said, placing a finger to my lips. You're a nice person, Clara. I'm glad to be your friend. No matter what you decide, I'll still be your friend. She got off the bed, kissed my cheek, and smiled. Good night. The three of us walked into the foyer of Charlotte's stylish office, our moods down but none of us willing to talk about it. Belinda gave me a comforting look as I approached the reception desk, where a young woman with short blonde hair sat today. I had chosen to dress simply, a skirt, a ribbed turtleneck sweater, a jacket, tights, and heels. Hello, I said, forcing a smile, though I certainly didn't feel like smiling. I'm Catherine Grant. Of course, the receptionist replied with a smile. I'll get Miss Richards' assistant. A black woman with a bright smile hurried towards us. Miss Grant. I nodded, and she seemed taken aback when Belinda and Mark appeared by my side, but she carried on. I'm Jennifer. Miss Richards is running slightly late. She asked me to take you to her office. Can I get anyone refreshments? Coffee or tea? Anything. We all miserably declined the offer and took seats in the office. Jennifer observed the gloomy atmosphere, but remained upbeat. Well, she said brightly, Miss Richards won't be long. Charlotte burst into the office moments later, waving some documents at me. It's all here. She trailed off when she saw Belinda and Mark sitting in the office. What are you doing here? Mark gestured for Charlotte to shut the door. We had to come, darling, he said sadly, glancing at me. We're Clara's friends. We're here for support. Charlotte's eyes darted around the room. Support? What's going on? She fixed her gaze on me, and I wished I could disappear. Clara. I cleared my throat. I'm retiring from acting, I said in a broken voice. I felt miserable, and before I knew it, tears started streaming down my face again. Clara. Charlotte asked softly when she saw my tears. What's the problem? Everything can be solved, everything. No, it can't, I wailed, and Belinda handed me some tissues. Charlotte, Belinda said, I don't know how to say this, so I guess I'll just come out with it, if Clara agrees. She looked at me, and I nodded. What? Charlotte demanded, leaning against her desk. Clara used to be someone else. She worked under another name. Charlotte smiled in relief. So what? I can fix that. Is there another agent involved? she asked suspiciously, and I shook my head. Right, Charlotte said brightly, no problem. What name was it? Christopher Redden, Mark said softly, staring at the desk. What? We all looked away from her, and Charlotte collapsed into her chair, mouth gaping open. Impossible, she murmured at last, staring at me. Tell me this is a joke. It's no joke, Mark said slowly. It's definitely not a joke. Charlotte stared at me as I wiped my eyes, and I tried to smile. I'm sorry, Charlotte, I whispered. She peered at me. I can't see it, she said, shaking her head. I can't. Is this a joke? She repeated suspiciously. Is there a camera here? Mark, what are you playing at? I'm not playing at anything, Charlotte. Charlotte looked at me, squinted, then shook her head. It can't be. This is a joke, isn't it? She asked again, hopefully. No, I whispered. Jesus, Charlotte muttered suddenly, rummaging through her desk drawer. I need a cigarette. Don't let Jennifer in here, she'll make my life hell if she knows I'm smoking again. The lighter clicked, and she inhaled deeply, exhaling a cloud of blue-gray smoke. I should have guessed, she muttered after a long pause. No one puts emotion into lines like you do. Suddenly, she chuckled. Poor old Richard, he'd have a heart attack. Despite ourselves, we all managed weak grins. So, Charlotte said firmly, what happens now that you've proved you can get apart? I'm retiring, I murmured, and both Belinda and Mark stared at me in shock. I'm giving up acting. Giving up? Even Charlotte was taken aback. You, give up acting? And what happens to Clara? Does she just disappear? No, I said, head down. Clara stays. Belinda smiled and took my hand. Mark's eyes widened and then he too smiled in support. Charlotte studied me closely, and I lifted my head to meet her gaze defiantly. Do I understand what you're saying? She asked, her voice soft but clear. You want to stay a woman. You want to remain as Clara? Yes, I whispered. You're very brave, Belle said, squeezing my hand. I see, Charlotte said, almost to herself, her gaze distant. Who else knows about this, apart from you three? We all looked at each other. My doctor, I said, and Mark nodded. Doctor? Charlotte raised an eyebrow. You're serious, aren't you? Doctors are bound to observe patient confidentiality, but we can tidy that up to make sure. What's his name? Her name, Mark corrected, Helen Waters. Charlotte jotted the name down on a pad. I'll get the numbers from you later. Anyone else? Not that I can think of, Mark said, glancing at Belinda and me. Belinda shook her head. No one else. No one, I added. I dried my eyes and arranged myself a little more comfortably in the chair. Why do you want to know this? What are you getting at, Charlotte? Belinda asked. Yes, dearie, Mark added, spill. Charlotte set her pen down, took a final drag of her cigarette, then stubbed it out. She pulled a can of air freshener from her bottom drawer and sprayed the room. My assistant is a real bitch, she explained apologetically, and, despite ourselves, we laughed. Well, Charlotte began, why does it have to stop? Why not go on with it? All eyes were on me. I don't want to lie. It's not lying, Charlotte said firmly. You are planning to be a woman? I hope so, I murmured. I think so. Exactly, so it's not a lie, Clara, Charlotte suddenly exclaimed. I look at you now and all I see is the beautiful and talented Clara Grant. It was meant to be. But what if it doesn't work out? What if it's only the novelty? I glanced at Belinda as I said it. What if I decide to go back to, Clara, you can't even say it. All right, she said more calmly, if you change your mind and want to stop, want to be a man, then it's a lie. The silence in the room was deafening. And then? I asked meekly. Then? Well, of course, we stop because then it would be a lie. Are you saying, Belinda asked, a note of wonder in her voice, that Clara should take the part? Charlotte leaned back in her chair and spun around, arms outstretched. Well, Can anyone tell me why she shouldn't? I can't think of a reason, Mark said with a big smile, and Charlotte turned on him. Why are you involved in this, Mark? Did you start it? Suspicion weighed heavily in her voice, and I stared at him, wanting to know too. Okay, he said, his camp persona dropping. I admit I started it, but Clara is so talented. Before he looked around for a word, found it, and continued, blossomed. She was miserable, yet I could see so much talent. I'm a good friend, he said quietly, staring at me. Sometimes good friends try to do what's best. I planned it, and when the opportunity came, I took it. I couldn't help myself. I quickly went over and hugged him. Thanks, I whispered softly. It's okay. Don't worry, I still prefer men. He winked, and I hugged him again, laughing. What about you? Charlotte asked Belinda. I'm her friend, Belinda said. That's it. I helped her, although, she smiled, she didn't need much help. You're not lovers? Charlotte snapped, and we were all shocked. Charlotte, why would you say that? Belinda demanded, and Charlotte calmly shrugged. There's already talk that you two are lesbian lovers. That's fine, talk I can handle, but I don't want to be surprised by any compromising photos, understood? Mark chortled. Do it in the dark, girls. Belinda threw a cushion at him, which he easily dodged. The mood in the room had shifted, and it felt completely different from when we first entered. Was it really only 30 minutes ago? It felt like a year had passed. Clara, what do you think? Charlotte asked quietly, looking at me hard. It's a fantastic part. I know, I said, it's wonderful, but I don't know. Belinda smiled. You can do it, Clara. You know you can. I stared into space, trying to think. It felt right. I wanted to, but I was afraid of something. Maybe it was just the fear of the unknown. Clara, Charlotte said quietly. Sarah has gambled a lot on this. It's an edgy play, we all know that, but she believes in it. We all do, I protested. It's fantastic. She couldn't get backers. She's mortgaged her house on this, Clara. Without the right Simone, the play dies. I think we all know no one can play Simone like you. I suddenly understood why Sarah had so much control. There you go, I said, blinking against the tears. Flattering again. Charlotte shook her head. Not flattery, Clara, just the truth. As I said, once you get to know me. I looked up at her in surprise. I hope I can get to know you, I said slowly. I think we'll work well together. I'm already incredibly impressed by Catherine Grant. I wiped my eyes. Okay, I said, I'll do it. Belinda shrieked and hugged me, Mark cheered, and Charlotte pumped her fist in the air. Okay, Charlotte said, taking control. No one else is to know, understood. We all nodded. I'll talk to your doctor. When do you see her again? I'll make the appointment, but I'll tell her myself. Okay, but make sure she understands how important this is. And don't go to Chris Redden's flat, Charlotte instructed. I'll send someone to clear it out and terminate the lease. I must have looked shocked because she softened her tone. Are you okay with that? Yes, I said quietly. It's better this way, Belinda reassured me. Where are you staying now? Charlotte asked. I glanced at Belinda, who answered firmly, Clara and I are sharing a flat until she finds her own. She looked at me. She can stay as long as she likes. All right, Charlotte sighed. I'll have to handle the lesbian lovers angle. Could work to our advantage, though. I'll start building a backstory for you, and you'll need to know it well. How do you explain Mark? How do you explain him? Belinda asked, and we all laughed. We went to school together or something, I said timidly. Great idea, Charlotte said, scribbling it down. And Belinda? Belinda and I actually did go to school together, Mark volunteered, and I gaped at him. I know, terrible, isn't it? Belinda said with a grin. Perfect. I'll need details of the school and some other things, but I'll get those later. But, Charlotte said, smiling as she pushed some papers toward me. "I have a contract for the amazing Catherine Grant to sign. You too can witness it. Is it okay?" I asked her, trusting her instantly, and she smiled. They tried adding things like enforced movie deals and such, but I got us out of that. "No, it's a good contract, and you'll make money if the play does well." "It will," I said firmly, signing the contract. "It will now," Charlotte said with a smile. Charlotte took some photos of me with her digital camera for her records and to mount in the foyer alongside other artists she represented. Afterward, she ushered us out of her office, and we were suddenly standing on the sidewalk. Mark and Belinda hugged me. "You did the right thing, darling," Mark said. "You really did." "I think so too," I said with a small smile. "You know you did," Belinda added. Mark was off to the airport, heading to Germany for a 4-week performance. "I'll be there on opening night," he promised. "You better," I said as he jumped into a taxi. Charlotte surprised me, I admitted as Belinda and I walked down the high street in search of coffee. A part of me wanted to say, "You're walking down the street as a woman, and you're not concerned." Another part, the bigger part, or at least the one that seemed to be taking over, said, "Forget it, it's you." "Why?" Belinda said as we sat down. "She's smart, and she gets to manage the 2 leading actors in what will be a hit play, not to mention the possibility of making you a superstar." I blushed. "Stop it." Belinda seized my hand, holding it firmly. "Listen to me, Clara. You told them yesterday that you trust my advice." I nodded. "Good, because I don't lie. You were great yesterday, and I know you'll be great in the part. Don't forget you rehearsed with me. I've seen how you get into character and everything," she said with a smile, giving me a once-over. "You look great, you're natural, and now," she patted my hand as the waiter approached, "be beautiful and regal because everyone in this coffee shop is watching you. Dr. Waters will see you now, Miss Grant." "Thank you, Clara," Helen said with a broad smile. "Hello, Helen. Do you want me to get undressed?" I wanted to get the embarrassing part over with quickly. "Not yet. Sit, and we'll talk. How is everything?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. The words rushed out, and she listened silently, but I sensed sympathy in her demeanor. She brushed my concern about confidentiality aside. "I'm not going to tell anyone, Clara. The transition process insists you live as a woman for at least a year, maybe 2. If you choose to do that while on stage, that's your business. Now, when the man approached you in the restaurant, how did you feel?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Confused. Maybe flattered." "Was he attractive to you?" she asked gently. "He was nice and very charming. He had wonderful hands, big and strong, but—" "Oh, I don't know." "You noticed his hands?" she asked, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Yes," I said, puzzled. "Why?" "Nothing." She smiled. "Don't worry, it's normal to be confused." "Normal?" I said, a bit bitterly. "Yes, normal. Now, you've been taking the hormones?" I nodded. "I think I can see the results. Let's get you undressed so I can examine you." Helen was seated at her desk while I dressed. "The changes have been remarkable, Clara. I'd like to take some blood samples to run a few tests. Is there anything I should be worried about?" I asked as I came from behind the screen. "No, not at all. I just want to understand why the hormones have worked so quickly. I have some suspicions that could explain your physical characteristics before you started hormones, but I need to run some detailed tests." I sat down at the desk, and she smiled. "I can give you another booster shot. Would you like that?" I nodded, and she quickly administered it. "All done. You can lower your skirt, Clara." She then took some blood samples. She was writing something when I checked my face in the small mirror over the hand basin. I turned back to see her smiling at me, and I flushed as I sat back down. "Clara, have you decided to use the chest forms, the ones that are glued on? The glue can't be removed for a month, so it's a good trial." "I'd like to," I said hesitantly, but I'm not sure how I'd get them. I don't want to draw attention to. Of course. Let me get them and arrange for them to be couriered to your home in a plain parcel. Don't worry, it'll come from me, not the manufacturer. Are you happy with the cup size? It's AD. What do you think? I asked shyly. I think it looks good on you, she said, her tone thoughtful. There may be some discomfort as time goes on, but we can always arrange for a reduction later. I'll also order some new underwear to help with control. They're adjustable, so when more shrinkage occurs, you can make adjustments. I assume I've explained the hormone effects. She raised an eyebrow, and I nodded. Good. Those ones you have are for show business, not everyday wear. I think you'll find these more feminine, and they're very brief. You can even wear them under a swimsuit. Swimsuit? I was taken aback, and she laughed. Yes, Clara, a swimsuit. I'll order 5 pairs and have them added to your bill. There'll be no record of the purchase from the manufacturer. She smiled and set her pen down. All done. Your hormones are ready, and if there's any issue, just call me. Okay, I said, standing. Helen. Yes. Thank you. I know you didn't have to order all of this for me, so thanks. She stood and smiled. I expect tickets to one of your shows, she joked. That's my payment. Opening night, Helen. Really? Her eyes lit up, and I chuckled. Yes. I'll have to tell my husband. It'll be formal. He might not like it. He'll hate it, but I'll love it, she grinned. The parcel arrived 2 days later, and I asked Belle to help me. She read the instructions and applied the glue. Ready? I took a deep breath. Yes, I said, I'm ready. And I was. I quickly grew comfortable with the chest forms. The corset became unnecessary. I could simply use a bra. I looked at myself in the mirror, wearing just a bra and panties with the control thong underneath. The surface of my panties was smooth, and with my curves, I couldn't see any trace of crease. A waist had emerged, and my bottom had grown. My skin was soft and smooth. When Belinda applied the chest forms, she noticed that my own chests had started to develop as well. There were times when I wondered if I was just following a whim, feeling down about small things, but all I had to do was look in the mirror. The woman smiling back at me seemed happy, and her eyes held something I hadn't seen in a long time. When I looked closely, I saw the reflection of my mother, her eyes, high cheekbones, and full lips. I had always resembled her more than my father. Both had passed away in a car accident 5 years ago, and I missed them terribly. I wondered what they would have said if they were alive. I was on a path I knew I couldn't turn back from. I didn't need a stylist for the first full cast meeting, so Belinda didn't come. She had to focus on her school, preparing it for sale. There were plenty of buyers, but she needed to show the new owners how to operate the school. Are you sure you want to sell it? I asked her, and Belinda laughed loudly. Are you kidding? Of course. Getting back to the theatre is wonderful, it's what I've missed. The first meeting was a read-through in small rehearsal rooms while the sets were being built in the theatre, so I was somewhat comfortable with the process but still nervous. I wore a pair of black jeans I'd borrowed from Belle. She told me they fit me better than her, but I was surprised at how large my bottom looked in them. What? Belle laughed when I asked her. Did you just ask if your bottom is too big in those jeans? Don't worry about it, I mumbled, blushing. They look fantastic, you look fantastic, and very sexy. Wear that black top we bought with it, and you can borrow my leather jacket. Belinda played with my hair, pulling it back, brushing it upwards, and making a simple half ponytail. I looked in the mirror and was satisfied. Casual, yet sexy, and no one would mistake me for a man. I walked into the rehearsal rooms and was greeted by Richard, who seemed to have decided to move past our earlier disagreement. I figured it was best to do the same. Miss Grant, he exclaimed, as if surprised. Richard, I replied, accepting his air kisses. Please call me Clara. He introduced me to the cast, and Simon Thompson stared at me. For a moment, I panicked, thinking he might have recognized me. But then I saw that his gaze was fixed on my chests, the look unmistakable, pure lust. "I'm so glad to meet you, Catherine," Simon said, smiling, his eyes flickering down to my chest and back to my face. Does he think I don't notice? I wondered. "Charlotte's told me how talented you are, and if you need any assistance, personal rehearsals or anything, don't hesitate to ask." I smiled and suppressed a giggle. Did he really think his charm was that overwhelming? "Thank you, Simon, you're very kind." Sarah smiled warmly at me and gave me a hug. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "It will make a real difference." "It's nice of you to say so, Miss Wright," I murmured. "Sarah, please." I smiled. "Okay, Sarah, I'm Clara." Sir Humphrey Barton, a famous Shakespearean actor, was playing Peter. I suddenly felt overwhelmed by his presence. He smiled when we were introduced but didn't say much. We sat around a long table for the first read, with cups of coffee, bottles of water, and fruit juices in the middle. We all had pens to mark our scripts or make notes in our character books. Every actor used a notebook to describe their character, build a background for motivation, and note the relationships their character had with others. Sarah sat at the end of the table next to Richard, and I wondered how she felt, watching her words come to life with real people. The characters she had created on paper were now real, sitting around the table, waiting. "I think," Richard said with a smile, "before we begin, let's go around the table and have everyone tell us a little about their background and how they ended up here." Simon was seated next to Richard, so he started with what I assumed was meant to be a charming smile. He mentioned his experience in repertory theatre, a few plays, television, and a recent film in America. "Just a supporting role," he said modestly. "And I'm here because I auditioned and, well," he smiled again, "obviously I was successful." Sir Humphrey gave a brief introduction of himself as an actor and said he was there because Sarah was a friend and had asked him. He nodded kindly at Sarah when he said it, and she returned his smile. Then, suddenly, all eyes were on me. I cleared my throat. "I'm trying to be an actor," I said. "I know I still have much to learn. I'm here because I fell in love with the play when I read it, and I auditioned." They seemed to expect more, but I smiled and flicked through my script. Sir Humphrey was watching me, but he quickly turned away when I looked at him. Maybe he's noticed something, I thought. Maybe he knows. "Now," Richard said breezily, "let's have a casual read-through. We're lucky to have Sarah here, so if you have any character questions, ask away." Everyone nodded as Richard looked around the table. "All right, Act 1, Scene I." Hugh Benson, playing the minor role of the detective, began, and we all settled into the read. At least we tried to, though all the actors, except for Sir Humphrey and me, asked Sarah a lot of questions that I thought were, frankly, a bit trivial. Finally, we closed Scene I. Simone makes her first appearance in Scene 2, and I was a little nervous. But once I started, I quickly fell into the role and, I thought, it was going well. It was only the first read-through, so I kept it casual. Thankfully, the questions stopped, and we finished the casual read-through and broke for lunch. I wandered over to the table where sandwiches were laid out, picking up a small apple. I was munching on it when Henri appeared, with a woman in tow. "People," he said, his voice sharp, "this is Monica, responsible for ticket sales, group bookings, and, we hope, sponsorship." "Hello, everyone," she said brightly. "I'll be reaching out to potential sponsors when I can, and if you can assist, it would be appreciated." Everyone nodded, but I could see, as with actors everywhere, they didn't really want to be involved with the commercial side, they considered it beneath them. Monica seemed to sense that, but she smiled again, albeit a little sadly, and stepped back. I noticed Sarah talking to Henri in a low voice, and I remembered that she had gone into debt for this play. Monica moved to the table with a paper plate and selected a small sandwich. "Hello," I said, and she turned to smile at me. "I know who you are," she laughed. "I'm promoting this play, remember? I should know the cast members." I smiled. "I suppose you should." "Look," I said, "I didn't want to speak out before, since I'm new and still finding my way, But if I can help in any way, please ask. Monica studied me for a moment, and I could tell she was deciding whether or not I was serious. Okay, she said slowly, if there's an opportunity when you're not busy, I'll. No, I said, Monica, I'm completely serious. I understand what you need to do, and I want this play to succeed. So, whether I'm busy or not, if I can help, please ask. She looked a little stunned, then smiled. Thank you, Monica said quietly. After lunch, Richard called us back to the table. This time, we'll act out the read-through. We'll savor the lines, stay in character, and test the timing. Rodney, the young man who had read with me at my audition, stepped forward with a clipboard and a stopwatch. Time each scene, please. Rodney nodded, and we picked up our scripts. Let's sit down and begin, Richard said. Richard, I said hesitantly, I'd rather stand, if you don't mind. Richard was about to reply when Sir Humphrey smiled and said, I prefer to stand as well, Richard. Of course, all the actors decided to stand, and Richard shrugged. Fine. Hugh. Scenes 1 and 2 went well. I found myself deeply immersed in Simone, tasting the words and feeling the emotions. I was in my own world, Simone's world. Scene 3 was more intense, and I focused hard. Sir Humphrey's deep voice boomed around the room during Simone and Peter's first confrontation, the moment when Simone is first defeated. Peter, I think you understand the situation, Simone? Simone, shake an eye. I think, mean, you can't be serious. Peter, I am a very serious man. Laughs, I cannot imagine how you thought you could win against me. You should be home with your husband, girly. Simone, almost crying yes, I suppose I should. Peter, you will do what I say. Let's be perfectly clear. Are we clear, Simone? Simone, softly, yes, I'm clear. Tears ran down my cheeks as we turned the pages and started Act 2. I was emotionally charged, and it seemed the others were too, as we powered through Act 2. Time seemed irrelevant, and before I knew it, we were in Act 3, the final act. Peter, don't make accusations you cannot support, Simone. Simone, mildly I think you mean substantiate, Peter. I would have thought the chairman would have a better command of the English language. Perhaps you'll have time to brush up when you're in prison. Don't worry, I can prove everything very easily. Peter, I don't think it's wise to threaten me. Simone, laughing, threaten? I don't threaten, Peter, I just do. I expect your letter of resignation within 10 minutes. Peter, or you'll do what? Simone, do. Let's see if you're man enough to find out. We reached the final scene, and Simon moved closer to me as he read. His face was pale, and I realized he was a better actor than I had first thought. I think it looks good on you, she said thoughtfully. There may be some discomfort later on, but we can always arrange for a reduction if necessary. I'll also order some new underwear to help with control. They're adjustable, so when more shrinkage happens, you'll be able to adjust them. I trust I've explained the effects of the hormones. She raised an eyebrow, and I nodded. Good. The ones you have now are for show business, not for everyday wear. You'll find these more feminine and they're very brief. You can even wear them under a swimsuit. Swimsuit? I said, shocked. She laughed. Yes, Clara, a swimsuit. I'll order 5 pairs and add them to your bill so there's no record of you paying the manufacturer. She smiled and set her pen down. All done, your hormones are there. Just call me if you have any issues. Okay, I said, standing. Helen. Yes. Thank you. I know you didn't have to order all this for me. I really appreciate it. She stood and smiled. I expect tickets to one of your shows, she joked. That's my payment. Opening night, Helen. Really? Her eyes lit up, and I chuckled. Yes. I'll have to tell my husband. It'll be formal. He might not like it. He'll hate it, but I'll love it, she grinned. 2 days later, the parcel arrived, and I asked Belle to help me. She read through the instructions and applied the glue. Ready, I took a deep breath. Yes, I said. I'm ready. And I was. I quickly grew comfortable with the chest forms. The corset was no longer necessary. I could wear just a bra. I examined myself in the mirror, in only my bra and panties with the control thong underneath. The surface of my panties was smooth and flat, and with my curves, there was no trace of crease. A waist had emerged, my bottom had grown, and my skin was smooth and soft. When Belinda applied the chest forms, she noticed that my own chests had started to develop. There were times, when I was feeling down or uncertain, that I wondered if this was just a passing whim. But then, I would look in the mirror and see the woman who smiled back at me. Her eyes held a happiness I hadn't seen in years. I saw my mother's reflection, her eyes, cheekbones, and lips. I had always resembled her more than my father. Both had died in a car accident 5 years ago, and I missed them. I wondered what they would have thought if they were alive. I was on a path I knew I couldn't turn back from. I didn't need a stylist for the first full cast meeting, so Belinda stayed behind to focus on her school sale. There were plenty of buyers, but she still needed to show the new owners how to operate it. Are you sure you want to sell it? I asked, and Belinda laughed loudly. Are you kidding? Absolutely. Getting back to the theatre is wonderful, it's what I've missed. The first meeting was a read-through in small rehearsal rooms while the sets were being built in the theatre. I was somewhat comfortable with the process but still nervous. I wore a pair of black jeans that I'd borrowed from Belle. She told me they fit me better than her, but I was surprised by how large my bottom looked in them. What? Belle laughed when I asked. Did you just ask if your bottom looks too big in those jeans? Don't worry about it, I mumbled, blushing. They look fantastic, you look fantastic, and very sexy. Wear that black top we bought with it, and you can borrow my leather jacket. Belinda played with my hair, pulling it back into a simple half ponytail. I looked in the mirror and felt satisfied. Casual, yet sexy, and no one would mistake me for a man. I walked into the rehearsal rooms and was greeted by Richard, who seemed to have moved past our earlier disagreement. I figured it was best to do the same. Miss Grant, he exclaimed, surprised. Richard, I replied, accepting his air kisses. Please, call me Clara. He introduced me to the cast, and Simon Thompson stared at me. For a moment, I panicked, wondering if he had recognized me. But then I saw his gaze linger on my chests, the look unmistakable, pure lust. I'm so glad to meet you, Catherine, Simon said, smiling, his eyes flickering down to my chest and back to my face. Does he think I don't notice? I wondered. Charlotte has told me how talented you are, and if you need any assistance, personal rehearsals or anything, please don't hesitate to ask. I smiled and suppressed a giggle. Did he really think his charm was that powerful? Thank you, Simon, you're very kind. Sarah smiled warmly at me and gave me a hug. I'm glad you're here, she said. It will make a real difference. It's nice of you to say so, Miss Wright, I murmured. Sarah, please. I smiled. Okay, Sarah, I'm Clara. Sir Humphrey Barton, a famous Shakespearean actor, was playing Peter. I felt a little overwhelmed by his presence. He smiled at me when we were introduced, but didn't say much. We sat around a long table for the first read, with coffee, water, and fruit juices in the middle. We all had pens to mark our scripts or make notes in our character books. Every actor used a notebook to describe their character, create a backstory for motivation, and note relationships with other characters. Sarah sat at the end of the table beside Richard, and I wondered how she felt, watching her words come to life with real people. Her play, her creation, was now unfolding in front of her. I think, Richard said with a smile, before we begin, let's go around the table and have everyone share a bit about their background and how they ended up here. Charlotte placed a Euro passport on the table, and I opened it, stunned to see a picture of myself staring back. That's why the photo's in the office, I murmured, and she nodded. I had to make sure I got your ear, but it was acceptable. What do you think? They're wonderful, but, Charlotte, I asked, stumbling over my words, are they real? Absolutely. Not fakes, totally legitimate. But oh how? Don't ask, Charlotte said firmly. I have my ways and used a big favor I've built up over the years. Look, she added with determination, I did this because I think you're bloody marvelous. I wanted to help Chris, but it was impossible. But now, when I look at you, it's like a butterfly emerging from a drab cocoon. Shit, she groaned, I'm getting poetic. But I just want to help you, Clara. I'm so proud of you. I blinked and tried to smile. Charlotte, thanks. Charlotte smiled as she packed up her briefcase. Why don't you get dressed so I can help you set up your bank accounts? Now? Yes, so you can have money and we can go shopping. She looked at me seriously. What do you say? I changed immediately. As I got ready, I marveled at how easily I did it now and how much I enjoyed the process. Chris would have been lucky to spend 30 seconds getting ready, while I spent an hour or so. Chris didn't care about how he looked, but I did. Belinda showed me the wardrobe designs and said they'd be ready for a fitting in a few days. Who will do the fitting? I asked softly, hoping it would be Belinda, though I knew it probably wouldn't be. Beth, of course. Oh. I was concerned because that meant I would have to change in front of Beth May. Belinda read my mind. Don't worry, Clara. She won't be able to tell. You'll be in underwear, changing behind the screen. She's very good, and I think she'll only need to adjust the hem or maybe the waist. I've given her all your sizes. Okay. Belinda smiled. I'll be there, of course. Rehearsals were going well, and we were now using the sets, learning where to sit, which doors to open, and where the props were. It was time-consuming and painstaking work. I had brought a simple black dress for the photo shoot, sleeveless but buttoned to the neck. The boys finished quickly, but Belle took extra time to make sure my face and hair were perfect. Felix didn't seem to mind the wait as he smiled when I walked into the small theatre manager's office he had set up with a black backdrop and lights. Wow, he said. Very nice. Now stand there and look sexy. What? I laughed. Come on, give me a look. Like this, I said, looking down my nose, frowning, and wagging my finger. He laughed and took a few shots. Come on, a smile. I smiled, and the camera flashed. It felt like hours, and my cheek muscles were sore from smiling. One more. Thank God. It's not that bad. Now, something sultry, come on, he begged. I lowered my eyes, turned slightly to one side, looked at him through my lashes, and pouted. Jesus, he breathed, and the camera flashed rapidly. What a way to finish. I laughed. Thanks, Felix. What happens now? That's it. Charlotte will decide which ones we use. Good, she'll get rid of the ugly ones. There won't be any ugly ones, Clara. The camera loves you, you're a natural. Am I? If only you knew, I thought. Thanks. Henri showed me to my dressing room, and I wondered how Belle and I would survive 3 months in that tiny space. Cheer up, Belle whispered. The play might fold in 2 days. Don't say that. I slapped her playfully on the arm. The closed dress rehearsal was scheduled for Thursday, the full dress rehearsal for Tuesday, which would be open to a few invited media and celebrities, with opening night on Thursday. Everything was happening quickly. Monica asked how many people I wanted to invite to opening night. Belinda and Charlotte were already invited, so I said, 3. She looked at me strangely. Just 3. Are you sure you don't want more? I shook my head. I called Mark and told him he had to come. I wouldn't miss it for the world, darling. It's black tie, I reminded him. Oh good, I can wear my tiara. I laughed. You can be my date. I'd like that, he said quietly, and I was touched. Thanks, Mark. Don't worry, Clara, I won't embarrass you. I don't think you could. Charlotte, Belinda, and I went shopping for dresses for the opening night party. Charlotte would wear hers to the show while she sat in the audience, and Belinda and I would change after the show for the party. I was envious of the low-cut dark blue sheath Charlotte selected. We all agreed it looked stunning on her, and I wished I could wear something similar. Belinda's dress was a little more demure, though it still showed some cleavage. They both noticed my disappointment until Belinda showed me a black dress that was semi-low cut but had tight-fitting black lace from the arms to the bust line. "Try it on, Clara," Charlotte urged. "But we won't know until you try it." So I did. In the dressing room, Belinda and Charlotte examined me critically. "It looks fantastic," Charlotte said. I cupped my chests. "Can you see the join?" Belinda shook her head. "No, but I'll use a light foundation powder to blend the skin tones. You won't be able to tell through the lace." She smiled at me. Happy. I was happy, but I wanted more. I was determined to wear what I wanted to the end-of-season party in 3 months. Helen immediately noticed something was off when I handed her the invitation to her office. "Thanks, Clara," she said with a big smile. "You didn't have to, but I'm not giving these back. I've always wanted to attend an opening night in the West End." I laughed. "I expect you to be there. Don't forget it's formal, and there's a party afterward. Have you got your dress?" That's when I told her. She listened with sympathy. "It's too soon for surgery, Clara." "I know, Helen," I murmured. "I'm just venting." "Are the chest forms getting uncomfortable?" "A little," I admitted. "Sometimes there's itching or rubbing under them." "That's a good sign. It means your own chests are growing, and it'll become uncomfortable under the forms. They were already showing some growth at the last checkup, and you're progressing fast. We might be able to arrange something in 6 weeks." I mentioned the mid-season break in about 8 weeks and asked if 5 days would be enough. "It's day surgery, Clara, but you'll be bruised and sore for a while." "I don't care." Helen laughed. "All right, but think carefully. It's a big step. Not irreversible, but you'd need another operation if you change your mind." "Helen, I've been thinking about this non-stop. I'll consider it more if you want, but I'm not changing my mind." "All right then, I'll speak to a friend of mine. He's the best. Don't worry, it'll be discreet, but it will be expensive." "I don't care about the cost. Leave it to me. Good luck with next week." Rehearsals were progressing, and we were getting familiar with the set, learning where to sit, which doors to open, and where the props were placed. It was time-consuming and meticulous work. I had bought a simple black dress, sleeveless but buttoned up to the neck, to wear for the photo shoot. The boys were finished quickly, but Belinda took extra time to ensure my hair and makeup were perfect. Felix didn't seem to mind waiting as he smiled when I entered the small theatre manager's office, where he had set up with a black backdrop and lights. "Wow," he said, "very nice. Now stand there and look sexy." "What?" I laughed. "Come on, give me a look. Like this," I said, looking down my nose, frowning, and wagging my finger. He laughed and snapped a few shots. "Come on, a smile." I smiled, and the camera flashed. It seemed to take forever, and my cheek muscles started to ache from all the smiling. "One more." "Thank God. It's not that bad. Now, something sultry, come on," he urged. I lowered my eyes, turned slightly to one side, and looked at him through my lashes, pouting. "Jesus," he breathed as the camera flashed rapidly. "What a way to finish." I laughed. "Thanks, Felix. What happens now?" "That's it. Charlotte will decide which ones we use." "Good, she'll toss the ugly ones." "There won't be any ugly ones, Clara. The camera loves you, you're a natural." "Am I?" I thought. "If only you knew." "Thanks." Henri showed me to my dressing room, and I wondered how Belinda and I would survive 3 months in that tiny space. "Cheer up," Belle whispered. "The play might fold in 2 days." "Don't say that." I slapped her playfully. The closed dress rehearsal was scheduled for Thursday, with a full dress rehearsal on Tuesday open to invited media and celebrities. Opening night was on Thursday. Everything was moving so fast. Monica asked how many people I wanted to invite for opening night. Belinda and Charlotte were already invited, so I said, 3. She looked at me strangely. Just 3. Are you sure you don't want more? I shook my head. I called Mark and told him he had to come. I wouldn't miss it for the world, darling. It's black tie, I reminded him. Oh good, I can wear my tiara. I laughed. You can be my date. I'd like that, he said quietly, and I was touched. Thanks, Mark. Don't worry, Clara, I won't embarrass you. I don't think you could. Charlotte, Belinda, and I went shopping for dresses for the opening night party. Charlotte would wear hers to the show while sitting in the audience, and Belinda and I would change after the show for the party. I was envious of the low-cut dark blue sheath Charlotte picked. We all agreed it looked stunning on her, and I wished I could wear something like that. Belinda's dress was a bit more modest but still showed some cleavage. They both noticed I was disappointed until Belinda showed me a black dress that was semi-low cut but had tight-fitting black lace from the arms to the bust line. Try it on, Clara, Charlotte urged. But we won't know until you try it. So I did. In the dressing room, Belinda and Charlotte inspected me critically. It looks fantastic, Charlotte said. I cupped my chests. Can you see the join? Belinda shook her head. No, but I'll use a light foundation powder to blend the skin tones. You won't be able to tell through the lace. She smiled at me. Happy. I was happy, but I wanted more. I was determined to wear what I wanted to the end-of-season party in 3 months. After the first fitting, I immediately realized that Belle was right, it was easy, and Mrs. May didn't suspect a thing. It was a huge relief, but I was still determined to go ahead with the surgery at mid-season, assuming the play lasted that long. Belle began removing the hair extensions, saying she'd do it gradually over the next few weeks now that my natural hair was long. I'd always had thick hair, but it had never felt as thick as it did now, thanks to Belle's care instructions, her expert work, and the hormones. Once she finished with my hair, I looked in the mirror and felt happy. Most of the hair was now mine, and I wasn't relying on a prop anymore. I couldn't help but think, if only I could remove the prop on my chest. But I didn't want to think any further than that. Belle suggested a relaxing girls' night in with takeout and some rented movies. I could tell she was worried the stress of everything was getting to me, and perhaps it was, because I suddenly looked forward to a quiet night like that. Belle, I said hesitantly when she mentioned it, do you mind if I invite Charlotte? Will she come? I don't know, but I think she hasn't got any real friends, people she can just be herself with. Belle smiled. Clara, don't worry. I like Charlotte. She's funny and pretty brilliant for getting your ID sorted. Call her. I dialed Charlotte's number. Charlotte, it's Clara. Clara, I'm just leaving the office, but I heard you helped secure a sponsor, and you're performing in a factory? Yes, I think it's a good thing to do. Exciting, isn't it? Yes, and it's a great media opportunity. Charlotte, I'm not sure if. You'll have to face it sooner or later, Clara. Don't worry, I'll come. I'll keep everyone in check. She laughed, and I smiled, imagining her doing just that. Charlotte, Belle and I are having a girls' night in, takeout, chocolate, and movies. Want to join? You can crash here if you want. There was a long pause, and I guessed she was trying to figure out how to say no politely, but then she said, Clara, I'd love to. Her voice was low, and I sensed some emotion. Charlotte, I asked softly, is there a problem? No, no problem. I just never expected. I'll pick up some movies if you like. What kind? What kind of movies? I asked Belinda, who grabbed the phone. Hi Charlotte. How about something romantic, a comedy, she suggested. You know what I mean. She listened for a moment, then laughed. Okay, see you soon. Belinda smiled. Charlotte's bringing a preview copy of Simon's movie. Charlotte arrived with the movies and a bottle of white wine. We changed into comfortable clothes, sipped the wine, and started watching Simon's movie. Well, it wasn't exactly his movie. He was a supporting actor, with the lead role played by the famous Black American star, Will Johnson. After the seventh car explosion, about 10 minutes into the movie, Belinda yawned and said, "I've seen enough." "Me too," I agreed, sipping the wine. Charlotte switched it off. "It's awful, I know, but it'll make him famous in America, and that means he'll be rich. And so will you," Belle laughed. 10%, you mean, Charlotte chuckled. "Let's order a curry and noodles." We enjoyed noodles and curry while watching my best friend's wedding. Even though we'd seen it before, I felt like I was watching it through a new lens. When Rupert started singing Say a Little Prayer, Belinda giggled, tossed the chocolate to me, and said, "That's Mark." "Oh my God, it's something he'd do." "He would," Charlotte agreed. I watched Julia Roberts, her look, her eyes, her lips. "She's beautiful," I murmured, nibbling on a piece of chocolate. "She is," Belinda said. "But you're a million times better." I stared at her in shock, and both Charlotte and Belinda laughed. "You are, you tart," Belinda screamed, laughing as she threw a cushion. "You know it." "She doesn't believe it," Charlotte teased. "But she'll wake up one day and become a complete bitch, really up herself." Charlotte. Miss Hoity-toity, spoiled rotten, thinking she's oh so glamorous. "Yes, I can see it now," Belinda said calmly. "Complete and utter bitch." I dove onto them with cushions and tried to smother them, and we all fell about laughing. When the movie ended, we talked, and that's when I decided to tell them about my plan to have chest enhancement surgery during the mid-season break. I hadn't planned to tell them, but it felt like the right moment. "I'll come with you," Belinda immediately said. "You don't have to," I murmured, but I was grateful. "I know I don't have to, but I want to." "Are you sure about this, Clara?" Charlotte asked seriously. "It's a big step. I've thought about it a lot. I've been thinking about everything every day. My life has changed. It's like I was pretending to be someone else before when I was, I faltered. But now, I finally feel like me. This is who I am, and yes, to answer your question, yes, I'm sure." "Then, I'm glad for you." "Charlotte," I asked hesitantly, "I think this will be expensive." "Don't worry about it," she said airily. "Are you sure?" "I mean, Clara," Charlotte smiled, "by then, you'll be a big star, and the money will be available." "Star? I don't know." "There she goes," Belinda grinned, pretending she doesn't know, "but by then, she'll be Miss Hoity-toity. She'll think she's far too good for us." "Stop it, you two," I laughed, hugging them both. "And thank you." I was cleaning my teeth in the bathroom when Charlotte came in with her toothbrush. We stood side by side as we brushed. "Clara," she said after we rinsed, "thanks for asking me. I had a great time." "That's okay, Belinda asked you too," I smiled. "I know," she smiled back. I already thanked her. Charlotte slept on the sofa, and Belinda and I crawled into our respective beds after midnight. Charlotte was right, it was one of the best nights I had ever had. After the first dress rehearsal, the company approached the final stretch with renewed energy, knowing that we would be performing for a real audience the next day. At the end of the session, Richard shook his head and muttered, "I don't think we can improve on this." "Let's see how it goes with an audience, dear boy," Humpy said, and we all exchanged knowing glances. The car ride to the factory was silent, with only Charlotte, Belle, Simon, and I in the car. Richard had gone ahead with Rodney and some of the backstage crew to figure out the best place to perform, although John had suggested the empty warehouse as the ideal spot. Humpy was traveling with Sarah, Monica, and Henri, while the rest of the crew were in other cars. "I'm sure everyone's envious," Simon said with a grin, glancing at the three women in the car with him. "Just me, surrounded by three beautiful women." "They probably think you're gay," Belinda muttered, causing Simon to go pale. "Don't even joke about that. I can't have rumors flying about." Simon stammered. "Don't worry," Charlotte said, trying to comfort him. "Belle was just joking, right, Belle?" Belle rolled her eyes. "Just joking, Simon. We saw your movie, Simon. I jumped in quickly before Belle could tease him further. It was, well, interesting. Belinda and I were in the back seat, so Simon didn't see her poke her tongue out at me. Do you think so? Simon asked, clearly bemused. I thought it was a terrible piece of trash. We all burst out laughing. At the warehouse, there was no curtain, just a makeshift stage at the end of the space, with 2 doors on either side as entrances. Richard and the crew had rearranged the furniture to create a set, and we quickly discussed how we would improvise. We sat in a small room, feeling the tension as workers filed in and took their seats or perched on the scaffolding at the back of the warehouse. I thought I'd performed in every type of theatre, Humpy murmured. There's always something new, I said softly, and he smiled at me. John Stamford walked onto the stage, and the workers called out to him, engaging in some banter. They clearly knew him well. He explained what the company was sponsoring, and the audience seemed interested, but slightly confused. Sensing this, John suddenly said, I'd like to invite the leading lady to come forward and tell us a little about the play. Please give a warm welcome to Miss Catherine Grant. The applause was polite, and I smiled as I took the microphone. There were a few wolf whistles, and I joked, I bet you do that for all the actors who come up here, which got some laughs from the crowd. This play was written by a wonderful writer, a Bradford lass, I continued, and there were a few cheers. Sarah Wright, who has written a very moving story about a woman who's had a tough life. Imagine a tough life, because I know you all have it pretty cushy here. I winked, and the audience erupted in laughter and catcalls. I can imagine you, darling, someone yelled. That's good, love, I shot back in a broad Liverpool accent. The only place you and me will happen is in your dreams. The women in the crowd shrieked with laughter, and I heard someone call out to Tom, telling him that he'd just been told off. I won't spoil the ending, I said. But this woman has to fight through everything. I hope you enjoy the performance, and I'd love to chat with you all afterward. Thank you for supporting British theatre. You're doing a great thing. The applause was louder as I stepped off the stage, and Humpy greeted me with a fierce, bloody marvellous, Clara, I can't wait for this. We were on fire, the energy between us electric. The performance was far better than the previous day, and the audience seemed completely engaged. Time flew, and before I knew it, we were in the final scene. Tom, I don't think you understand my difficulties, Simone. Simone, sharply don't you, Tom? I think I've had enough difficulties of my own. I think I've had experience. Don't you? Don't you, Tom? Tom, Simone, don't. Simone, anguish don't what, Tom? Don't embarrass you. Or is it that you don't want to be reminded? Remind you of what you've done to me? Tom, Simone, can't we try again? Can't we? Simone, harshly try again? After everything you and your friends and family have done to me. You're pathetic. Tom, Simone. Simone, I've changed, Tom. You changed me, and now I'm stronger. I'm happy being me. This is who I am. Me. Tom turns and walks away, a broken man. House lights down, single spotlight on Simone. Simone, this is who I am. This is me. Fade to black. Curtain down. There was a long pause, and I thought they might hate it, but then the silence was shattered by wild cheering, whistles, and clapping. I bowed low, seeing that many women in the audience had tears in their eyes, clapping fervently. The men on the scaffolding were on their feet, clapping, whistling, and shouting. John Stamford rushed onto the stage and embraced me, and the cheers grew even louder. The other actors joined me, and I introduced them all. When I introduced Simon, the audience hissed and booed, but I joked, he's a great actor, and he's rather dishy. The women laughed, and I did the same for Humpy, who was clearly enjoying the moment. Belle and Charlotte stood by the open door, applauding wildly, and Belle gave me a thumbs up. After the performance, everyone was in high spirits. We'd pulled it off, and it felt incredible. After the first fitting, I knew Belle was right, everything fit perfectly, and Mrs. May hadn't suspected a thing. It was a relief, but I was still set on having surgery during the mid-season break, if the play lasted that long. Belle also began removing my hair extensions, planning to do it gradually over the next few weeks since my hair had grown quite long. I'd always had thick hair, but it had never felt this thick, thanks to Belle's tips on caring for it, her careful work, and the hormones. After she finished, I looked in the mirror and felt happy to see that most of my hair was now my own. It wasn't just a prop anymore. If only I could do the same with the props on my chest, I thought, but I quickly pushed that thought away. Belle suggested a relaxing girls' night in, complete with takeout and rented movies. I knew she was worried the stress was getting to me, and maybe it was because I suddenly found myself looking forward to the evening. Belle, I hesitated when she made the suggestion. Do you mind if I ask Charlotte? Will she come? I don't know, but I suspect she doesn't have many friends, people she can just be herself with. Belle smiled. Clara, don't worry. I like Charlotte. I think she's funny, and she's pretty amazing for helping you get that identification. Call her. I called Charlotte's mobile. Charlotte, it's Clara. Clara, I'm just leaving the office, but I heard you helped get a sponsor, and you're performing in a factory? Yes, I think it's a great opportunity. Exciting, right? Yes, and a fantastic media opportunity. Charlotte, I'm not sure if you have to face them sooner or later, Clara. Don't worry, I'll come. I'll keep them at bay, she laughed, and I grinned, imagining her doing just that. Charlotte, Belle and I are having a girls' night in, takeout, chocolate, and movies. Would you like to come? You can bunk down here if you want. There was a long pause, and I guessed she was figuring out how to politely decline when she suddenly said, Clara, I'd love to. Her voice was softer than usual, and I sensed emotion. Charlotte, I asked softly, is there a problem? No, no problem at all. I just never expected. I'll pick up some movies if you like. What kind? What kind of movies? I asked Belle, who took the phone. Hi Charlotte, something romantic? A comedy. You know the type, Belle said. She listened for a moment before laughing. Okay, see you soon. She looked at me and smiled. Charlotte said she has a preview copy of Simon's movie. She'll bring that too. Charlotte arrived with the movies and a bottle of white wine. We changed into comfortable clothes, sipped wine, and watched Simon's movie. Well, it wasn't really his movie, he was a supporting actor, with the lead role going to the famous Black American star, Will Johnson. After the seventh car explosion 10 minutes into the movie, Belle yawned. I've seen enough. Me too, I agreed, sipping my wine. Charlotte turned the movie off. It's awful, I know, but it'll make Simon famous in America, and that means he'll be rich. And so will you, Belle laughed. 10%, you mean, Charlotte said with a chuckle. Let's order a curry and noodles. We enjoyed the curry and noodles while watching my best friend's wedding. We all loved it, even though we'd seen it before, but I felt like I was seeing it with fresh eyes. When Rupert started singing Say a Little Prayer, Belle giggled, threw the chocolate at me, and said, That's Mark. My God, it's something he'd do. He would, Charlotte agreed. I watched Julia Roberts on screen, admiring the look, the eyes, the lips. She's beautiful, I murmured, eating a piece of chocolate. She is, Belinda said, but you're a million times better. I stared at her, completely surprised, and both Charlotte and Belinda burst out laughing. You are, you tart. Belinda screamed, laughing as she threw a cushion at me. You know it. You don't believe it, Charlotte said to Belinda. But she'll wake up one day and become a complete diva, really up herself. Charlotte. Miss Hoity-toity, spoiled rotten, thinking she's oh so glamorous. Yes, I can see it now, Belinda said calmly. Complete and utter diva. I dove at them with the cushions, trying to smother them, and we all fell about laughing. After the movie, we talked, and it was then that I told them about my decision to have chest enhancement surgery during the mid-season break. I hadn't planned on telling them, but it seemed like the right moment. I'll come with you, Belinda immediately said. You don't have to, I murmured, but I was glad. I know I don't have to, But I want to. Are you sure about this, Clara? Charlotte asked seriously. It's a big step. I've thought about it a lot. I've been thinking about everything every day. My life has changed, and it's like I was pretending to be someone else before when I was, I faltered, but now, I feel like I'm finally me. This is who I am, and yes, to answer your question, I'm sure. Then I'm glad for you. Charlotte, I said hesitantly, I think this will be expensive. Don't worry about it, she said airily. Are you sure? I mean, Clara, Charlotte smiled, by then, you'll be a big star, and the money will be available. A star? I don't know. There she goes, Belinda grinned, pretending she doesn't know, but by then, she'll be Miss Hoity-Toity. She'll think she's too good for us. Stop it, you two, I laughed, hugging them both. And thank you. I was cleaning my teeth in the bathroom when Charlotte came in with her toothbrush. We stood side by side as we brushed. Clara, she said after rinsing, thanks for asking me. I had a great time. It's okay, Belinda asked you too, I said with a smile. I know, she grinned. I already thanked her. Charlotte slept on the sofa, and Belle and I crawled into our respective beds after midnight. Charlotte was right, it was one of the best nights I'd ever had. The moment had arrived, the final lines. Tom, I don't think you understand my difficulties, Simone. Simone, sharply don't I, Tom? I think I've had enough of my own difficulties, enough experience. Don't you? Don't you, Tom? Tom, Simone, don't. Simone, anguish don't what, Tom? Don't embarrass you, or are you afraid to be reminded? Remind you of what you've done to me? Tom, Simone, can't we try again? Can't we? Simone, harshly try again? After what you and your friends and family have done to me? You're pathetic. Tom, Simone. Simone, I've changed, Tom. You changed me, and I'm stronger. I'm happy being me. This is who I am, me. Tom turns and walks away, a broken man. House lights down, a single spot on Simone. Simone, this is who I am, this is me. Fade to black, curtain down. The applause hit like a wave, overwhelming as I stood behind the lowered curtain. The others rushed out, and we embraced, waiting for the curtain to rise once more. As the curtain lifted, we slowly walked forward, soaking in the audience's response, bowing low in unison. We dropped hands, and the others stepped back, leaving me at the front. Blushing, I stood there, accepting the applause. Suddenly, the audience was on their feet, clapping wildly. Simon, Humpy, and the others joined in the applause for me. Henri came forward, holding a bouquet of roses. When I took them, my eyes welled up. This was the moment I had always dreamed of, being appreciated for my efforts by an audience. Of course, in my dreams, I hadn't been wearing a skirt. Humpy came forward, took my hand, and kissed it with a courtly bow. The applause grew even louder. How I made it off the stage and back to the dressing room was a blur, the sound of the audience like the roar of the ocean. I was shaking when I sat at the dressing table, and Belle gently pried my fingers away from the roses. Clean your face, she said softly, and I did so mechanically. Belle had already changed into her dress for the party, and she laid out mine. I glanced at the black lace dress and swore quietly to myself that I'd wear something better for the end-of-season party in 3 months. Richard and Sarah bustled in, hugging and kissing me, until Belle shooed them out. Charlotte and Mark arrived next. They both paused when they saw I was still flat, their smiles faltering. You okay? Charlotte asked quietly. Yes, I whispered. It's just that. I know, Charlotte said gently. This is everything you've dreamed of, and you're exhausted. You put everything into that performance, I could tell. You liked it. She nodded. You even had me in tears, and I've seen you do it so many times. You're brilliant, love. Absolutely brilliant. But now, you've got to give another performance, one just as important. Everyone at that party is waiting for you. You have to knock them dead. I nodded, smiled, and looked up to see Mark smiling down at me. "Mark," I squealed, jumping up and hugging him. He was dressed in a black dinner suit, his dark hair slicked back. "Very nice," I said, looking him up and down. "Quite dishy, actually." "You were brilliant, Clara," Mark said softly. "And Charlotte's right. We'll see you at the party." I nodded, and Belle pushed them out. "She has to get dressed. Tell them she's coming." Belle insisted on the corset, and I groaned but stood still while she pulled it tight. The dress was stunning, emphasizing my large chests without showing too much, if you know what I mean. Black stockings, high heels, and the necklace Belle had given me finished the look. Belle had styled my hair differently from Simone, and my face was flawless. "Wow," Belle said, as we looked at my reflection in the mirror. "Sometimes I really outdo myself." "Will I do?" I asked with a smile. "You know everyone at that party will be flawed. You cheeky tart. Let's go." The party was being held in a spacious anteroom off the foyer. People entered down a small flight of steps into the wood-paneled room. Belle squeezed my hand for good luck and stood back, allowing me to walk through the door and down the stairs. "Please," I thought to myself, "don't let me trip." Henri and Monica had been waiting at the top of the stairs. They beamed when they saw me, hugging and air-kissing. "You were superb," Henri whispered. "They love you, darling, and so they should." Monica was about to speak when we suddenly realized the room had gone quiet. I turned around to see hundreds of faces staring up at me. Henri stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Catherine Grant." The applause erupted around the room, and I waved as I made my way slowly down the stairs, Belle trailing behind me, as cameras flashed. At the bottom, Mark and Charlotte were waiting, and I hugged them both. A photographer approached, and I pulled Belle, Mark, and Charlotte closer, ensuring we were all in the frame. He snapped the picture, then pulled out his notebook, scribbling down names. I called out, "Belle, Mark, and Charlotte, my dearest friends." Other photographers soon appeared, their cameras clicking away. Before long, Richard, Humpy, Simon, and I were posing together. Then there was a request for just a shot of Simon and me, followed by another with me and Humpy. "Circulate, darling," Charlotte directed, and I nodded in agreement. I grabbed Mark's hand and tugged it gently. "Mind coming with me? Try to keep me away," he smiled. I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations as Mark followed slightly behind, never letting go of my hand. Finally, I spotted Helen standing in a corner with a tall man beside her, who I assumed was her husband. "Congratulations, Clara," Helen beamed, giving me a kiss on the cheek. "You were fantastic, and you had me in tears." I was, she glanced at her husband, a total mess. "He was," he grinned, "but I was almost there myself. I saw you wipe your eyes." She hugged him affectionately. "Clara, Mark, this is George, my husband." She smiled at me, taking in my appearance. "You look fantastic, Clara," she added. "The dress is beautiful." "You don't look so bad either, Mark," she winked. "I think I'm far more attractive than Simon Thompson, don't you?" Mark posed. "Don't get carried away," Helen teased, and we laughed. "Thanks for the tickets, Clara," she added. "We'll read the reviews in the morning, but we have to head out. Our babysitter has a plan to be a millionaire by 17, and she charges if we're a minute late." They left, and Mark went off to get drinks while I was surrounded by more well-wishers. Laura Wood approached, extending her hand. "Laura Wood," she introduced herself. "I have to write a review, and it won't be easy." "Oh?" I asked, concerned. "Words may fail me," she replied simply. "You were outstanding, and you'll enjoy reading the review." "Thank you so much," I said, grateful. Another quick smile, and she was gone. Then Bill O'Connell congratulated me, and I told him I thought the program books were excellent. John Stamford also offered his best wishes, mentioning how much the factory staff was still talking about the performance. I managed to slip away to a corner and looked around for Mark. He was deep in conversation with a young man I didn't know, and I thought I might not get that drink after all. Congratulations, Miss Grant, a deep voice said, and I quickly turned to greet the well-wisher but gasped in surprise. Oh, was all I could say when I saw Alexander Edwards standing before me, a big smile on his face, with 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. Your friend, he nodded toward Mark, asked me to bring your champagne. Of course, I was happy to. Do you remember me? I'm. Of course, Alexander Edwards, isn't it? The one who kindly gave us champagne when we were celebrating rather noisily in that restaurant. He gave a slight bow and offered a champagne flute. More champagne? He asked with a twinkle in his eye. I think you lit up the restaurant. He raised his glass in a toast. Here's to an extraordinary woman who is as talented as she is beautiful. I flushed, sipping the champagne. Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed the performance. My companion was teary-eyed, but the first to stand when the applause started. Companion? I wondered. Who is he with? Thank you, but I think you're being very flattering. Do you mind if I introduce you to my companion? He asked. I'm sure she'd love to meet you. He wants me to meet his date. I thought, feeling a bit miffed. Of course, I said coolly. Alexander disappeared into the crowd, quickly returning with an elderly woman in a floor-length evening gown and an embroidered shawl. Miss Grant, he said, I'd like you to meet my mother, Mary Edwards. His mother? Why did I feel relieved by that? Mrs. Edwards smiled and took my hand. An extraordinary performance, Miss Grant. Really extraordinary. I thoroughly enjoyed it, even though it was quite an emotional journey. Thank you, I said, smiling. But please, call me Clara, I said, glancing under my lashes at Alexander, both of you. When I saw you walk onto the stage, I could see why Alexander hasn't stopped talking about you, but close up, you're even more beautiful. My face burned, and I noticed Alexander's face turning red at his mother's comments. Mother, really, he said, trying to smile. I'm glad he met you, Clara, she said with a wink. I don't think he would have bothered getting tickets to the opening night of a play without meeting you. Oh, I said to Alexander, raising an eyebrow, you don't enjoy the theatre? I do now, he said simply, and his mother laughed. Alexander, we must let Clara greet her other guests, she said, ushering me forward. It's a pleasure to meet you. And you, Mrs. Edwards. No, please, call me Mary, she said with a wave. As Alexander escorted her away, he grinned and nodded. I see he came back, Belle said. Yes, I said dreamily. He did, didn't he? She tugged at my elbow, joking, steady on, young lady. Let's not get all tarty now. It wouldn't do. The party ended, and the cast, supporting crew, family, and friends adjourned to a private room in a restaurant to await the reviews. It was there I gave Mark the wrist chain I had purchased weeks earlier. Thank you, I said simply, handing it to him. Thank you for, well, everything. He was taken aback but then smiled. You're welcome. I noticed Rodney was seated next to Belle and talking animatedly. When I looked closer, I saw she was enjoying his attention. So much for having a crush on me, I thought with a grin, and was glad for Belle. Charlotte was deep in conversation with Simon, so I looked around for a seat and began sitting down at the lower side of the table with some of the backstage crew. The crew grinned in surprise, clearly pleased. Hello, Billy, I greeted as I took a seat, nodding at the others. Billy, head of lighting, had been with the company for many seasons. Hello, love, he replied. Cracker job out there, you were just perfect. Me and the lads were saying just that. I leaned forward, and they all followed suit. That's nice of you, I said in my best Liverpudlian accent, but I'm tired of hearing all that. Where can a girl get a drink? They chuckled and poured some white wine, which I took a sip of. Hey, Billy, I said, still in the accent, about the lights at the end. What? He looked at me, brow furrowed, and the rest of the crew fell silent. They were perfect, I added. Cracker job, love. The crew burst into loud laughter, and Billy chuckled. You're a breath of fresh air, love. You really are, but, he nodded toward the head of the table, I think they want you up there. Henri was gesturing toward the empty chair at the end of the table, and Monica appeared at my elbow. I know this is where the fun is, she said with a smile and a wink at the crew, but the star belongs up there. Go on, love, Billy said, do us proud. I sighed and let Monica guide me to the head of the table. As I sat down, the cast and company erupted into applause. I get applause for just sitting down? I asked, feigning surprise. This acting thing is easier than I thought. Laughter filled the room, and the atmosphere relaxed as the first course was served. Henri sat to my right, Sarah to my left, with Monica next to her. Belinda was laughing at something Rodney said, and Mark was deep in conversation with Charlotte when Henri stood, tapping his knife against his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, just a few words before the reviews come in. Frankly, I don't care what the critics say, I think we all know we were part of something special tonight. Hear, hear. Humpy chimed in, and Simon nodded in agreement. I'd like to thank Sarah Wright for allowing our company to present her new, stunning work, Henri continued, and applause circled the table as Sarah nodded and smiled. And I'd like to thank all of you for your outstanding contributions that have ensured tonight will have a place in theatrical history. Henri sat down to applause, and Humpy stood, raising his glass. A toast, ladies and gentlemen, he boomed in his best Henry VIII voice. To our small company. To our small company, everyone echoed, followed by a moment of silence before conversations resumed. After the second course, Henri returned with newspapers in hand, passing them around. Clara. Henri offered me a copy, but I shook my head, suddenly feeling nauseous. Charlotte went straight to Laura Wood's review and cleared her throat. First one, she announced, and the room fell silent, everyone eager to hear. I looked around, suddenly feeling the need to escape the room, but Sarah gently squeezed my hand. This is the hardest part, she said softly, but it'll be fine. I smiled at her, grateful for the support, as Charlotte began reading. A few nights ago, I had the pleasure of attending the dress rehearsal for Sarah Wright's new play, Silken Memories. I believe it is Miss Wright's best work, but it is a difficult play. The actor portraying Simone, the leading role, faces the challenging task of taking the audience on an emotional and deeply psychological journey. To say that Catherine Grant's performance as Simone was outstanding would be a vast understatement. I thought I had seen perfection, but I was wrong. Last night, I attended the opening performance of Silken Memories, and Miss Grant was spectacular, delivering a performance that had me in tears by the second act and cheering for Simone by the final words. I'll say it first, tonight, a new star has risen in British theatre, and I'm sure she will shine for many years to come. At those words, Charlotte lowered the newspaper, and the table erupted into applause for a moment before she continued. Sir Humphrey Barton gave an excellent performance, and I personally think it was one of his best in contemporary theatre. The confrontational scenes between Sir Humphrey and Miss Grant were electric. Simon Thompson showed a depth of acting that hasn't been seen before, using his physicality to portray the despair and defeat of Tom, the estranged husband. Charlotte finished reading, and I sat quietly, toying with my glass, only half listening. It suddenly hit me that I didn't care much about the review. The joy was in the performance itself, the connection with the audience, and helping them experience something new. I was jolted out of my thoughts when I noticed they had stopped reading and were all staring at me, their faces beaming with smiles. Sir Humphrey stood again. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses and be upstanding. A toast to the newest star, a great actor, and a friend to many, Miss Catherine Grant. Miss Catherine Grant, they all echoed, and I smiled weakly, blinking back tears that were dangerously close to falling. Speech, speech, they chanted, clapping, and I stood, unsteadily, to address the room. Isn't this all rather nice? I said, slipping into my Liverpool accent, causing everyone to burst into laughter. But, I'm terribly embarrassed by it all, I added in my refined accent once the laughter subsided. I really am. You deserve it, Gel, one of the crew called out, and everyone nodded in agreement. I think we all deserve it, I said with a smile, because this wouldn't have happened with just one person. Billy and the lads always made sure the props were in place, kept putting marks down for me, and of course, the cracker job with the lights. Laughter filled the room again. Beth May, who made the wonderful costumes. Everyone, I could go on, but, I winked, that's Richard's job. More laughter followed as Simon playfully jabbed Richard in the ribs. I'd like to thank Belinda and my friend Mark, I continued. We've known each other since school and have helped each other through whatever we've attempted. I couldn't have made it here without them. Applause broke out as Belle and Mark grinned, raising their glasses to me. And the formidable Charlotte Richards, who keeps me in line. She keeps everyone in line. Simon joked, pretending to be miserable. I could thank Humpy, Simon, and Richard, but we've got 3 months to go in the season, and I'm sure I'll annoy them along the way, so I'll save that for the end of the season, I said with a grin. I waited for the laughter to die down. And lastly, I'd like to thank the audience. Without them, we have no purpose. I sat down and Henri whispered, "Have you considered politics?" "Cheeky sod," I murmured, and he laughed. They continued reading more reviews, passing around pages with photographs. The one of Belle, Mark, Charlotte, and me appeared in most of the pages with the title "Star Celebrates with Friends." There was also a photo of Mark and me moving through the crowd, holding hands, titled "Star's Childhood Sweetheart." Mark laughed loudly at that. Belle, Mark, Charlotte, and I were unusually silent in the cab as we made our way to Belle's flat. "What's wrong?" I asked, noticing their thoughtful expressions. "Well, you did it," Belle said. "Yes," I sighed, slumping onto the sofa and kicking off my heels. "I did." "So," Charlotte prompted, "now what?" "What do you mean? Is that it? Is Clara Grant retiring from acting?" Charlotte, Belle, and Mark exchanged glances. "We thought you might give it up after you achieved your dream." I said with a sly smile. "I did say that, or hinted at it, didn't I?" "You did," Mark said seriously. "Can't a girl change her mind?" Charlotte grinned. "You're going on with the season?" "Too late to stop now," I murmured, leaning back, eyes closed. And, of course, I knew deep down, I didn't want to stop. Then the hard work began, playing Simone 6 nights a week for 6 weeks. It was exhausting, but we got into the routine and kept the spark alive. Audiences flocked to see the play, and Henri enthusiastically told us that the first 4 weeks were sellouts, with tickets still in demand for the rest of the season. That's when Henri began talking about a second season and started searching for an actor to play Simone. Apparently, the last performance of this company was completely sold out. Once a fortnight, I treated myself to a salon visit, facials, eyelash extensions, the works. Belle insisted on doing my hair but also taught me many new ways of styling it and doing my makeup. My chests had become quite uncomfortable, and Helen expressed surprise when she examined me. "Your own chests have grown dramatically," she said with a smile. "A definite A-cup now." I stared down, surprised. "Are you still committed to this, Clara?" "Yes, I really want to do this, Helen." "Then I'll make an appointment for you with Vincent Singh." "I've already spoken to him." I looked away, then hesitantly asked, "Does he know?" Helen shook her head. "As far as he's concerned, you're just another woman wanting chest enhancement. In today's world, it's nothing unusual. He's had many show business patients and understands the need for discretion. He's excellent, and he's very proud of his work." "What about when I'm under anesthetic?" "The operation is quick, and the anesthetic is light, so no need for a catheter." "You'll have someone with you, right?" I nodded. "Good. Relax, Clara. Should I arrange your initial consultation for Friday morning?" "Yes, please." "When?" "I'll try for Friday morning. You'll have to go back to the flexible chest forms for now, no more glue." Helen was right, Vincent Singh was fantastic. He explained everything thoroughly. The scars will be under the chests, and they won't be visible after a while. "You've decided on a D cup?" He smiled. I blushed and nodded. It's the size I've been, you know. I completely understand, and it suits you perfectly. You'll have someone to stay with you, right? I insist that patients stay at least one night. Yes, I do. I told Charlotte I was worried about the cost, and she smiled. Don't worry, Clara. Well, I do. It's a lot of money. I know, but I have a deal lined up from Sasha Cosmetics. I hear you know the director of marketing? Charlotte asked slyly, grinning at me. Yes, I do. They're interested in using you to promote a line of lip gloss and eyeshadow. It'll be billboards and magazine ads at first, but they're offering $50,000 for just one photo. They also want an exclusivity agreement for 2 years. Interested? Yes, it sounds great. When? I've said no until after the first season, once you've had a chance to relax. They'll do the shoot then, and they've agreed. Should I say yes? I could really use the money, Charlotte. Saying yes will make me feel better about spending so much on the operation. I picked up my bag. Who were you talking to at Sasha? I asked casually, though she wasn't fooled. A young man called Byron Goodward. Do you know him? She asked innocently. No, I don't. Apparently, the director of marketing suggested he have a look at you. I see, I said, trying to stay cool. I have to run, I'm late. Okay, I'll tell you later what Byron said his boss called you. She grinned widely as I turned back. What? Thinking man's crumpet. Oh my, I said, my face burning. Everyone was looking forward to the mid-season break. It was the time to unwind while the backstage crew did repairs and maintenance, props were refreshed, and the actors had a chance to recharge. We all seemed to be heading in different directions. Simon was off to America to promote his movie, Humpy was going to his country house, and Richard planned to go fishing. When they asked me, I shrugged it off, saying I might go walking in Scotland or something I hadn't decided yet. In truth, I was heading straight to Dr. Singh's private practice for the operation. Finally, I would have real chests. When I woke up, I felt a bit nauseous, but Belinda reassured me it was just the effects of the anesthetic. After a while, the sickness faded, though a dull pain settled in my chest. Belinda saw my grimace and smiled sympathetically. Everything went fine. Dr. Singh said it was perfect. I resisted looking at the hospital gown but noticed some bandages peeking through the neckline. I could tell my new chests were larger than before. I felt a strange sense of pride and sighed, leaning back with my eyes closed. I must have dozed off, because when I woke up, the nurse was giving me an injection for pain. There you go, she said with a smile. Belinda helped me drink some water, then assisted me to the bathroom and back to bed, where she sat by my side as I dozed again. The next day, I felt much better, though the pain in my chest was more persistent. Belinda came in with a smile. Good morning, sleepyhead. I'll get some breakfast. Before I could protest, she returned with a tray. I managed to eat a little, and the nurse came by to help me wash up and prepare to go home. She told me the bandages would be removed the next day during my follow-up appointment. I was careful all day at the flat, and Belinda fussed over me. The pain wasn't unbearable, but it was noticeable. When the bandages came off the next day, I stared at them, wondering what my new chests would look like. Later that evening, when I was feeling much better, Belle and I were watching television, and I cheekily asked, "So, what's going on with you and Rodney?" Belle turned red. "We're just friends, that's all." "Friends like you and me?" I raised an eyebrow. "Well, not exactly like that," she said. "Like you and Mark, then?" "No, it's different. We just talk about things." "I've noticed," I grinned. "You two look good together." "You think so?" she asked anxiously. "Clara, I really like him." "I know. He's cute." The next day, Nurse Carol came in to remove the bandages. I felt a little nervous, but she reassured me with a smile. "Don't worry, Clara. Dr. Singh is the best, and he was really proud of his work." The process was quick and painless, and soon I was staring at my new chests. Despite some bruising, they looked incredible, and I felt an overwhelming wave of emotion. They are swollen, Carol said gently, so they'll look bigger than you expected. The swelling should go down by tomorrow night, but the bruising will take a little longer. Carol carefully examined the scars under each chest and introduced me to the surgical bra I'd need to wear for the next few days. Dr. Singh breezed in, repeating how proud he was of his work and reassuring me of the confidentiality. As Belle and I drove home, she asked, "Happy?" "Yes, very happy." The swelling went down quickly, and the bruising faded too. On stage, I was sometimes uncomfortable, but I managed to hide it well. When I accidentally bumped into a chair on my first day back, I winced. Richard had called a meeting to refocus us after the break, and everyone was talking about their time off. Humpy noticed my grimace and asked, "Clara, everything okay?" I thought fast. "I bruised myself while hiking in Scotland, that's all." He rolled his eyes at the idea of such a barbaric activity, and the meeting continued. Belle and I had bought a few more bras, and I loved how natural my chests felt now. They were truly a part of me. The chest forms had felt so fake in comparison, though I was the only one who could really tell the difference. I had mentioned to Helen that I was experiencing some back pain, and she had laughed. "You've got a little more weight in the front now, Clara. You need to support them and work on your back muscles." 2 weeks later, Charlotte brought flowers and a bottle of wine to celebrate. After a few glasses, Belle and Charlotte exchanged strange smiles as they stared at me. "What?" I asked, curious. "Come on," Charlotte grinned. "Come on, what?" "Give us a peek." Belle nodded. "Come on, we've been dying to see." "I don't. It's just us girls." With a sigh, I pulled my top off over my head. I was wearing a blue lace underwire bra, and both girls stared in amazement. "Wow," Belle said. "Now that's cleavage." "There," I said, shrugging. "Is that all we get to see?" "Yes." "Oh, come on," they begged. I sighed and unsnapped my bra. "Wow," Charlotte said, eyes wide. "They're perfect," Belle whispered. "There are no scars." I quickly put my bra and top back on. "Are you still happy?" Belle gently asked. "More than anything." I wore a low-cut black top with string straps, paired with jeans, boots, and my favorite new leather jacket to a cast meeting. I had been borrowing Belle's jacket for so long, I finally bought one of my own. It was soft black leather from Italy, and I loved it. I sat down beside Humpy, took out my notebook, and suddenly realized the room had gone quiet. I looked around, confused. "What?" I asked, and the men quickly became absorbed in their notebooks and clipboards. "Nothing," Richard said. "Nothing," Simon echoed, but his eyes flicked to my chest. I smiled and bent over my notebook, pretending not to notice. Monica came up to me after the meeting. "So," she said with a sly smile, "about time you stopped hiding your assets." She winked and moved off to talk to Henri. Only 3 weeks left until the season ended. It had become a grind, and while I'd miss working with everyone, I was ready for a break and needed time to make some decisions. One morning, Charlotte called, giggling. "Guess what? I'm too tired to guess. Someone called me today and wanted to know if I could give him your phone number." "Who?" "Alexander Edwards." I froze. "Oh. Did you give it to him?" "Of course not," she said, offended. "I don't give out my clients' private numbers." "Well, I did tell him I'd call you to see if you wanted him to have it." "Oh," I said, my heart pounding. "Do you want me to give him your number?" Charlotte asked gently. "I don't know, Charlotte," I hesitated. "You like him, don't you?" "Yes," I admitted. "So." I took a deep breath. "Give him the number." We were shopping for dresses for the end-of-season party when Belle casually mentioned she was officially dating Rodney. Charlotte and I hugged her and congratulated her. While we were taking a break in a coffee shop, Charlotte casually asked, "What's he like in bed?" I was shocked, but also intrigued, and covered my mouth with my fingers as I waited for Belle's answer. She was a bit flushed but grinning. "Not bad," she said with a wink, And we all burst out laughing. We passed by a shop window when I saw it, a red off-the-shoulder dress, low-cut but form-fitting. Belle and Charlotte laughed when they saw the look on my face. I think we just found Clara's dress, Charlotte said to Belle. It fit perfectly, and I posed in front of them. Well, that's good, Belle said, looking at me with a satisfied expression. I won't have to do your makeup for the party. I pouted. Why not? Because no man will be looking at your face all night, Belle said matter-of-factly. Charlotte shrieked with laughter, and I pretended to sulk. Did you see the reaction when she wore that black top? Belle giggled. No, Charlotte said, I wasn't there, tell me. Don't, I warned. Should I get this dress? I asked. Truly, Charlotte said, it's perfect. You look fantastic in it, so buy it. As I was paying for the dress, the cashier kept staring at me. Excuse me, Miss Grant, she said, looking at my credit card. I've seen your photograph in the newspapers, haven't I? You may have, I said cautiously. She nodded. I knew you were a model or something. We were having lunch when my phone rang. I quickly pulled it from my bag, trying not to look embarrassed as some of the other diners gave me annoyed glances. Hello. Hello, Clara, a deep voice said, sending a ripple through my chest. This is Alexander. I hope it's not inconvenient to call. No, I croaked, holding the phone away for a moment to clear my throat. No, of course not. Charlotte Richards gave me your number, so. It's perfectly fine, Alexander, I said, noticing both Charlotte and Belinda raising their eyebrows at me. Well, I was hoping, he stumbled, sounding nervous. I mean, if you were willing and I was acceptable company, of course, if you would consider having supper with me after your performance. I could feel my heart pounding. What should I do? My friends were staring at me, faces serious. I made up my mind. What harm could there be in having supper? I would love that, Alexander. When were you thinking? I could hear the relief in his voice. Any night, tonight perhaps. Tonight. Belle and Charlotte frantically shook their heads. I'm sorry, Alexander, I can't tonight. Tomorrow night, perhaps? That will be wonderful, he said eagerly. I'm new to the theater, he added, and I thought, I'm new to being a woman. Do I come backstage, Clara? Yes, I'll let Rodney know you'll be coming. I hung up, and both girls were grinning. Why not tonight? I asked. Belle rolled her eyes. You just have to get a new dress. And it's good to let him wait, Charlotte smiled, calling the waiter over for the bill. We'll find your outfit. I could wear my new dress. On a first date. Belle laughed. There's a real tart hiding under that angelic exterior, Charlotte. I blushed while Charlotte rolled her eyes. Hardly angelic, Belle. We decided on a simple dark blue soft dress. As the shop assistant wrapped it, I suddenly felt nervous, the reality of what I had agreed to sinking in. What's his number, Charlotte? I asked frantically after I took the bag and stepped outside. I need to call him, tell him I can't make it. No. I added, struck with a new thought. Charlotte, you call him. Tell him I'm ill or tired or. Calm down, Clara, Charlotte said gently. Call him. I insisted. All right, Charlotte said with a glance at Belle. I'll do it later. Shall we take a taxi to the theater? I sat quietly in the cab, my mind racing. The girls stayed silent until we were in the dressing room. Finally, I spoke in a low voice. Don't call him, Charlotte. I can't do that, can I? Belle and Charlotte shook their heads. No, Belle said softly. I'm sorry, Charlotte, for yelling at you, I murmured, my eyes filling with tears. I panicked. I know, it's understandable. Belle sat down next to me. There's nothing to panic about, Clara. You've stood up and performed your heart out in front of thousands. You've bared your soul. I flinched at her intensity. But it's just supper, Clara, nothing more. Don't make it a big deal, okay? Just relax. Her tone softened. Do you understand? I think so. Thanks, You too. I'm a goose. It's natural, Belle said, hugging me. Natural? I said a bit bitterly. Yes, Charlotte replied seriously. I was terrified on my first date. What about you, Belle? I was physically sick 3 times before he picked me up. Really? I asked, amused. Oh yes. I have a few horror stories, Belle winked. I'm still having them, Charlotte said sadly, and I hugged her. I'm really sorry, Charlotte. I was a bitch. Miss Hoity-toity. Please, I laughed. Don't start. You'll be fine, Belle said, glancing at me in the mirror. I was trembling, heart racing. I had seen Alexander waiting in the corridor as I came off stage. Belle rushed me past him, saying, "Give her time to change." Of course, he smiled, and I gave him a nervous smile in return. You can't keep him waiting forever, Clara, Belle said gently. I know. Belle, I said, turning to her and taking her hand, am I doing the right thing? Going for supper. You have to eat, Clara. Why not with someone you like? I know. But am I deceiving him? Clara, Belle said seriously, in my mind, and in everyone's mind, you're a woman. You think like one. You are one. You're not acting, it's who you are, right? Yes, I said quietly. Then you're not deceiving him unless, she added with a cheeky grin, you're thinking about marriage? Belle. Well, get a move on. The poor dear has been waiting for 30 minutes. I took a deep breath, stood up, and kissed Belle's cheek. Thanks, Belle, you're a real friend. I was sitting at lunch when my phone rang. Quickly, I grabbed it from my bag and tried not to feel embarrassed as some of the diners cast annoyed glances my way. Hello. Hello, Clara, a deep voice said, sending a ripple of recognition through me. This is Alexander. I hope I'm not interrupting. No, I croaked, holding the phone away momentarily to clear my throat. No, of course not. Charlotte Richards gave me your number, so. It's perfectly fine, Alexander, I said, noticing Belinda and Charlotte raising their eyebrows. I was hoping, he stumbled nervously. I mean, if you're willing and I'm acceptable company, of course, if you'd consider joining me for supper after your performance. My heart skipped. What should I do? My friends' serious expressions made it clear they were waiting for my response. I made up my mind. What could go wrong with supper? I'd love that, Alexander. When were you thinking? I could hear the relief in his voice. Any night, tonight perhaps. Tonight. Belle and Charlotte immediately shook their heads. I'm sorry, Alexander, I can't tonight, but maybe tomorrow night? Tomorrow sounds wonderful, he said eagerly. I'm new to theatre, he added. And I thought, I'm new to being a woman. Should I come backstage, Clara? Yes, I'll let Rodney know you'll be coming. I hung up, and both girls were grinning at me. Why not tonight? I asked. Belle rolled her eyes. You just have to get a new dress. And it's good to let him wait, Charlotte smiled, signaling the waiter for the bill. We'll find your outfit. I could wear my new dress. On a first date. Belle laughed. There's a real tart hiding under that angelic exterior, Charlotte. I blushed while Charlotte rolled her eyes. Hardly angelic, Belle. We decided on a simple, dark blue dress. As the shop assistant wrapped it up, I suddenly felt nervous. The realization of what I had agreed to began to hit me. What's his number, Charlotte? I asked frantically as we stepped outside. I need to call him and tell him I can't make it. No. I suddenly had a new thought. Charlotte, you call him. Tell him I'm ill or tired or... Calm down, Clara, Charlotte said softly. Call him. I insisted. All right, Charlotte said with a glance at Belle. I'll do it later. Shall we take a taxi to the theatre? I sat silently in the cab, my mind racing. The girls stayed quiet until we reached the dressing room. Finally, I spoke in a low voice. Don't call him, Charlotte. I can't do that, can I? Belle and Charlotte shook their heads. No, Belle said quietly. I'm sorry, Charlotte, for yelling at you, I murmured, my eyes filling with tears. I panicked. I know, it's understandable. Belle sat down next to me. There's nothing to panic about, Clara. You've stood up and performed your heart out in front of thousands. You've bared your soul. I flinched at her intensity. But it's just supper, Clara, nothing more. Don't make it a big deal, okay? Just relax. Her tone softened. Do you understand? I think so. Thanks, you too. I'm a goose. It's natural, Belle said, hugging me. Natural? I said a little bitterly. Yes, Charlotte replied seriously. I was terrified on my first date. What about you, Belle? I was physically sick 3 times before he picked me up. Really? I asked, amused. Oh yes. I have a few horror stories, Belle winked. I'm still having them, Charlotte said sadly, and I hugged her. I'm really sorry, Charlotte. I was a bitch. Miss Hoity-toity. Please, I laughed. Don't start. You'll be fine, Belle said, glancing at me in the mirror. I was trembling, heart racing. I had seen Alexander waiting in the corridor as I came off stage. Belle rushed me past him, saying, "Give her time to change." Of course, he smiled, and I gave him a nervous smile in return. You can't keep him waiting forever, Clara, Belle said gently. I know. Belle, I said, turning to her and taking her hand, am I doing the right thing? Going for supper. You have to eat, Clara. Why not with someone you like? I know. But am I deceiving him? Clara, Belle said seriously, in my mind, and in everyone's mind, you're a woman. You think like one. You are one. You're not acting, it's who you are, right? Yes, I said quietly. Then you're not deceiving him unless, she added with a cheeky grin, you're thinking about marriage? Belle. Well, get a move on. The poor dear has been waiting for 30 minutes. I took a deep breath, stood up, and kissed Belle's cheek. Thanks, Belle, you're a real friend. Barbara Wilkins, she said, clearly surprised. It's a pleasure to meet you, Barbara. Thank you for the compliment. As I sat down, Alexander smiled. You came back. Did you doubt me? I laughed, starting to eat. After a moment, I noticed Alexander's eyes on me. You're not eating? Alexander looked flustered. Well, of course, I'm sorry. I must apologize, but you have the most extraordinary eyes. They're this mixture of blue, violet, and green. Quite beautiful, actually. I smiled. Alexander Edwards, I teased softly, I thought you were terrible with women. The evening went on, and it wasn't long before it was time to leave. I can take a taxi home, I said. There's no need to escort me.